How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Still,
Renarian,
and Volacel, and we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week. But first of all, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server, which you can get to by clicking on the link provided in the description underneath the show archive on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. Whoopsie, I seem to have done a thing. So, on the stream today, I am playing a bit of Hard Space Shipbreaker, because it's on sale, because they just put out the second chapter of the story. I play a lot of games where you have to build things, as you may have noticed. This is a game where you dismantle things. I'm not sure if I've actually loaded up the correct save or not. I think I have. There we go. Okay. So, the whole goal is you are a guy who just dismantles spaceships. Also, an indentured servant. Because, you know...
I see.
If there's a large company in a video game, they have to be horrible, money-grubbing lunatics. It's just...
So who are you indentured to?
Lynx Corporation. Essentially, all the money and the training and the equipment they set you up with in order to do your job, they charge you for. So you start the game at $1.2 billion in debt.
That's a lot of debt.
There's a lot of debt.
Billion.
When you're first starting out the game, you might make $1 million per ship you dismantle, if you're lucky. So I will just do that. It's a nice game. It's got a few little fiddly nuances to it that you need to kind of learn as you go along, but it introduces mechanics to you at a fairly good rate. Like the first ship, it lets you dismantle just completely in your own time with no fancy gimmicks or anything like that. You're not going to do it perfectly, but you're going to do it well enough. Then it starts putting in time restrictions, air and health restrictions, but it also starts giving you new tools to play with, like your tethers and stuff like that, so you can just throw really big bits of ship into the recyclers at one part, or tether a whole bunch of smaller parts together and send them off as some sort of, debris conga line. I'm going to take apart a science ship, because I can.
What are you working towards here?
Ultimately, the goal is to, there's no real reason given as to why you particularly are there. It's just a job. But once you're in, the goal is make enough money to pay off the debt, then you can start actually earning money. But from what some of the other characters have said is, no one's ever done that before. People tend to die before that happens.
I see.
So, yeah. The story isn't complete because the game is still early access, because, of course it is. But we'll have to see. I'm not sure where the story is ultimately going to go. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, you're just a working schmuck who takes apart ships for a living. You're not exactly in a position to kind of overhaul the evil corporation or anything like that.
Is the evil corporation run by Horatio?
Possibly. I mean, there is cloning. Also, I set myself on fire. That's not what you should be doing. So yeah, I'm just going to... Whoopsie. I'm just going to play that during the show, just to give you an idea of it. It is a very relaxing game.
Oh, this is like that chapter of Emperor's Text-to-Speech where everybody's just in debt all the time.
Yeah.
And has to work off their debt.
Yeah.
But nobody ever gets there.
Nobody ever gets there. Have to try and learn the cues for stopping, the time when I should stop cutting these supports. There is an audio cue, which is fine, but I've got the sound turned off because I'm doing the show. So yeah, I'm going to probably set myself on fire a couple more times. So yeah, this is that I'm dismantling here is a tier 3 ship. The first ship you have is just that. It's just an empty hull. But now I'm at kind of tier 3. I'm starting to get hazards in the ships. Like there might be a short-circuiting electrical panel which will electrify part of the hull. Don't touch that. That would be bad. It also adds in the barge down the bottom here, so you can take parts off and just recycle the entire component. Things that are fully usable and just, more value as an actual functioning item rather than, scrap metal. For some reason, the thruster cap is not one of those items, so it goes over there. And that's basically the game, is you just chop bits off a ship and put them in the right place. Rinse and repeat.
That's a lie, I don't see because I don't have the stream open, but...
Yeah, I get it. And for some reason, these ones always seem to bug out. Hang on. In the right spot. There we go. As far as the rest of the week's been going, I haven't done a whole lot. I've finished the renovations, actually, for my room, though, and everything's starting to come together. It does, however, mean that I've come to a kind of an end of an era, and I have to say goodbye to my computer case and replace it. Because there's just no room for it anymore. It's, I've got what is it called, an Antec Scorpion. I've had this thing for like 14 years. It's been 5 different computers.
I remember that model.
Yes.
I feel it feels like something from my youth, though.
I know, right? I've had it for 14 years. 5 computers have been in that case. But I no longer have the space to actually use it anymore so much. So I'm retiring it and going for a standard tower case. One with a lot of air throughput, but still. I considered making the jump to water cooling, but that's kind of an expensive jump.
Yeah, you've got to put down a lot of capital.
Yeah, and that's just for the starting setup. So you're looking.
I don't really see the point. Like, I've never used anything other than a stock cooler, because unless you are actually planning to try and trick out your rig, then there's not really any reason to go above and beyond, except I guess you have a special circumstance of being in Australia.
Yes.
But generally speaking, I don't really see the point. Like, for me, because I'm already not working with the best hardware in the world, I tend to view it as, well, I could do X, Y, and Z to get more power out of my computer, or instead of that, I could just buy a better chip, which would be cheaper and would get a more definitive improvement. It's only when you're already sitting at the top of the technological ladder that it makes sense to change that kind of thing.
Yeah, if you're doing like super hardcore graphical design or something like that, then you're probably going to get a lot more bang for your buck out of it. Or if you've got, top of the line graphics card or something like that, in which case you're already made of money, so why not? But yeah, for the standard consumer, it's not really worth the expense.
Top of the line graphics card in today's market.
Yeah, good luck.
You make funny joke.
That's what I said. You're already made of money, so enjoy.
I suppose the thing that I'm very wary of right now, as far as buying computer stuff goes, is that it might be a no matter what the price is, now is the time to spend situation because of the current geopolitics. The odds that China will invade Taiwan, and that Taiwan will give over control of the semiconductor industry to China in order to avoid getting burned to the ground, like, that's likely to happen within 5 years, the way things currently stand, considering the absolutely gutless leadership of America. So if that happens, then China will control all the semiconductors in the world virtually, give or take.
Yeah.
So
sure.
That basically means that we will no longer have any meaningful access to the semiconductor market. The prices will be theirs to name, and we will be an enemy nation that they have no interest in dealing with. So, yeah, it's sort of a difficult situation. I've been wondering if maybe I should just upgrade everything now before the world catches on fire.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens on that end of things.
But it's okay. Joe Biden's losing his patience. Unfortunately, he's losing his patience with the American people for absolutely no reason at all.
Well, realistically, he's not losing his patience. He's just saying what he's been told to say because he doesn't have a mind of his own anymore.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a puppet at this point. He doesn't have anything left in his head to be anything else.
What do you mean at this point? Anyway, let's not get too bogged down on the politics.
It's pretty bad this week, though. If you want to, we can go off on a tangent.
You guys have an entire other podcast you can do for that.
Yeah, but it's nothing like that. It's mostly just good for torturing you.
We haven't done one in a while. We've been discussing ways of doing it, but unfortunately everything is in motion, and the usual position at any given point in time is that by the time we click publish, it will be out of date.
Yeah, and it's just Serathis has been asking about another mostly peaceful, and finding a good topic that's stable is very difficult, because if we talk about any current events, all we're going to wind up doing is navigating lies.
I mean,
Yeah,
politics.
Most of what, well, it's not even at the political level at that point. Like, the media has no interest in delivering anything that is even tangentially connected to reality to the average person. Like, what most people know has no connection to reality. They are simply being fed the popular line that has been decided upon by the elite as this is what the people are going to believe, and that's pretty much the way things stand, which makes it very difficult to navigate when you're trying to do a discussion on a topic. How do you decide what things are legitimate and what things are not?
Yeah,
everything that you can't put down to personal experience is very much called into question, because everybody is reporting in accordance with some agenda.
Yeah, we would literally have to spend hours, no matter what topic we picked, just going through what we've read and what sources we think are truthful, and try to cross-reference them to come up with something approximating the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's really stood out in stark contrast for me, because I qualify as an expert on the whole microbiology matter. I've got the PhD to prove it, and I can just see how much that comes across the airwaves is just total bullshit.
Yeah.
There were no underlying facts to back this. They were things that were said for political convenience.
You're an
and a lot
expert,
of
but
things
you're not
are
an
like that.
expert.
Well, it's not a government
Well,
bureaucrat.
Well, our,
Yeah, exactly.
our national microbiology expert is this disgusting SJW pink-haired land whale
Oh, jeez.
with pronouns in her bio, who was caught last week breaching the lockdown conditions
Because of course she was.
because the rules only apply to the little people, obviously. The media leapt to her defence. And
Yeah.
oh well, she's special. She was only doing it because reasons X, Y, and Z that are totally legitimate and don't apply to anybody else. The guy who can't go to his dying wife's bedside or whatever, he's not important. But this land whale has to be able to go out for a swim at the beach. But
Yeah.
So yeah, Sarah,
that's
this,
that's the way things stand on that. I would like to do another episode, but we need to really get a fix on a topic that we think we can assemble a cohesive sort of clump of data on to discuss, rather than something that is just pure speculation.
yeah, because our best guess is only going to be as good as everyone else's at some point. But so if you think you got a topic in particular, Sarathis, that real hard data exists on, we could do something on, you're free to tell us, and we'll talk about doing it. Dump it in the politics board or something.
Alright. Alright.
This was Bern's week that we just took over.
Yeah, it is. Trying to think what else I actually did, because it's been another nightmare week. We had our last Drunk Cowboy event last night. Thankfully, I did the day shift. So I got to avoid most of it.
How's your staffing roster looking?
Bleak.
Have you started interviewing anybody?
Nope, because we've got no applicants. We get quite a few inquiries, but it's always from young people who are on their provisional licenses, and that doesn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah, you need somebody consistent, it sounds like.
He needs also someone with an open license in order to actually get the correct qualifications to, work in my industry.
Yeah.
Because once you start doing hire cars and things like that, there's a few provisions in traffic laws, particularly in relation to where you can and can't park and stop. So you don't want to give those to someone who's inexperienced.
Is all this a fact of what your government's doing right now, or is this some other factor that's stopping them from...
This is the standard way that the public transport industries are regulated.
Yeah, this is all standard. Also, small town. So, yeah. There's nothing really governmental about this, except, the fact that we can't adjust our fees or anything like that because, Uber happened.
Yeah, I was about to say, how much has that impacted you?
Yeah, that's gutted the industry.
Uber is this is something that the hardcore libertarians and capitalists don't like to admit, and I'm happy to admit it because I'm not a libertarian. But basically, there is no difference in terms of economic impact between Uber and illegal immigration. They functionally behave the same way. A whole bunch of cheap, illegitimate labour injected into the market, destroying the industry. That's just how it operates.
Yeah, it's more the governmental browbeating that Google took part in.
Well, I mean, that was all just to facilitate the continued existence of that type of industry, and your average free marketeer likes to just talk about it's just a free enterprise, but it's not free enterprise. It's free enterprise that subverts all of the labor laws and allows you to basically operate slave labor with gullible people who don't know that that's what they're participating in.
Yeah.
Because most of them are getting paid like joke wages. They just don't realize it.
And the moment that something goes wrong, they're left out in the cold.
It's part of that whole phenomenon where the average individual has zero economic understanding and, frankly, zero mathematical ability. So this is not a case of, oh no, they aren't being paid a minimum wage and that's bad, because I don't really agree with minimum wage either. But
Mhm.
this is them literally screwing themselves because they don't know the value of a dollar and they can't do math.
It's choosing to make less than you would make at a burger flipping job rather than the price the burger jobs are paying.
You're doing 10 times the work for half the money.
Thing is, it's dragged
And,
everyone else who was already in the industry down with them down that same
Yeah,
path.
because it's hyper competitive. It's like slave labor. They
Mm-hmm.
use the method that China uses, which is to pay their employees nothing and completely flood the market. That's what Uber does. It's not this glorious example of free enterprise that libertarians like to claim it as. It's just tricking people into participating in slave labor.
And let's not
And
talk
just
about
because
the
they agree,
extortion racket that is Uber Eats.
yeah. Well, I would never use Uber Eats anyway because my starting assumption would be that whoever I was paying to pick my food up would spit in it before giving it to me. Because there's literally no incentive for them not to.
Steal your chips.
Yeah. Like, I've never met anybody other than me. Actually, no, not other than me anymore. I've never met anybody who, while having hot food in the car, driving down the road, does not sneak their hand into the bag to grab some chips out.
It's physically impossible.
Yeah, I have. I may or may not sometimes just eat the whole meal if traffic's bad.
Yeah,
That's just, it's going to happen. Like, you can't sit there and smell that and not eat. It's
Yeah.
just not possible.
It's
So yeah,
not possible.
I think before you get to any of the business concerns of Uber Eats, I think that it is impossible for you not to get your food contaminated by the peasant that you've asked to pick it up.
So yeah, peasants. What else have I actually played? I watched a little bit of anime, still keeping up on Slime Time. Oops, I just said that entirely the wrong way.
I'm eternally frustrated by Slime Time because I always feel like next episode is going to be the cool one.
Yeah, the back half of the current episode is the cool one. So they've split the cool bit over 2 episodes.
It is very nice seeing Clayman get put in his place.
I just loved, Rimuru saying, I bet one of my attendants would be enough for you, and Shion just turns up and beats the ever-loving hell out of him. Completely unprompted.
They don't belabor it as much in the anime as they do in the books. They mention it in the books many, many times that basically Shion's power level is absolutely through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where Rimuru would be reluctant to fight her because she's just that powerful. It's just that she's also dumb as a rock.
Yeah.
So most of that power goes to waste or gets spent on things that are completely frivolous.
Yeah.
But she's spectacularly powerful. Like, she outmasses sort of like half the table of demon lords in terms of raw power. She's just not clever or skilled enough to use a lot of it other than to hit things.
Yeah, you've got Shuna and Benimaru as well, but in their case, it's restraint.
Well, Benimaru is prodigious at mass action. When it comes to large-scale combat, he's basically the best general in the setting.
Mm-hmm.
And Shuna is basically the best analyst in the setting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she can see a small-scale tactic once and understand exactly how it's executed and then use it herself.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to hit stuff really hard.
And sometimes you just need something to hit really hard. Exactly.
In fact, I found that is usually the solution for most things.
It's usually a solution.
Well, it seems to work for Lise and LSA throughout the entirety of Stormblood.
It's kind of Lisa's pet bread and butter, really. Is there an obstacle? Kick it.
Punch it.
Punch it, kick it, smash it. Is it still there?
All in
Smash
the
some
mind.
more. So yeah, I have to keep chipping away slightly at Final Fantasy, not nearly as much as I'd like to.
Where are you up to?
The big event in Not Mogul. Oh, Mogul wishes it could look that good.
That thing.
Yeah, with
poor
with
Fern
Hayan.
is progressing at a rate of like half an hour play a day.
If that. So yeah, I found Lord Hayan, and he's a character.
He's probably I would say on balance the most sort of like level-headed of the major faction leaders without also being a stick in the mud.
Yeah.
He's the most.
He's the most shonen protagonist.
He is incredibly
Yeah.
shonen protagonist. But I kind of like Merwib, but she's a weird case.
Ultimately, I can't really get a handle on her character because at heart she's still a pirate.
Yeah. But she
she's
tries
also
not to be.
She's serving as a lord at the same time of a people who don't really like lords.
Yeah.
So her strength of leadership is sort of it's just due to sort of like the respect she's inherited from when she was admiral of a pirate fleet type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not built on any kind of civic structure. She's in charge because people are willing to allow her to be in charge. So she doesn't bespeak quite a bit of quite all that much sort of genuine authority because
Yeah.
of the culture of Limsa Lominsa is not one that respects structure.
But on the other hand, is when ass kicking is called for, she's right there. Not to the same level
Sometimes.
that oh, I'm drawing a blank on his
Raban.
name. Yes, thank you. Not to his degree, but she's there.
Well, Raban's a gladiator. It's sort of his job.
It's kind of his thing, yeah.
He's also the face of Ulda leadership, but he's not the leader.
He's not the leader, no.
So he's second in command there.
Yeah, the Sultana is a lot more the diplomat than he is. But she's
Sultana
got
is
zero
best-
combat chops.
She is best leader.
Speaking of, it comes to mind because of things that happen later. Did you ever do the Crystal Tower quest line, Burn?
No, I don't believe I did.
Because talking with Ari, I found that they made it mandatory, and there's a
Yeah.
good reason for that. In that, like, because I played through to the end of Stormblood before doing the Crystal Tower quest line, and the story has a totally different resonance if you've played the Crystal Tower storyline.
I see.
Because I played it without that knowledge, and then I went back and acquired that knowledge, and it casts a different light over it, because basically what you're seeing is a what's that phrase? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the whole point of the way that the denouement of Stormblood is assembled is to rhyme with Crystal Tower.
I see. So it's definitely worth going back and doing that.
Yeah, and
It's
it's not
also-
hard to do because there seem to be 1 million people queuing in that roulette.
Fair enough. How hard is
It's
that?
Like
also-
it requires 24 people to get in, and our queue times were like 5-10 minutes.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. It's also very directly relevant for the end of Stormblood and the start of Shadowbringers.
Right. So definitely
As
should
in-
do that.
As in events that happen there continue at that point.
All right. So should time allow, I will go and do that. Right. Oh boy, time has
If you're
not
lucky,
been
you'll
fun.
get a group. If you're lucky, you'll get a group that won't completely clown it up.
Hong
Don't
Kong.
get
Weren't
on
that
it, though.
lucky. Our last group was not like that.
Tell you what, with the massively increased player population that we've been seeing, it's been nice not having to wait half an hour for a queue to pop. Like
Yeah,
even
that's
as a
pretty good.
DPS, you can get in about 10-15 minutes.
I've actually been really surprised. Like when I'm solo queuing as a DPS, usually my queue is very, very short. Like when I went through and did the trials toward the end of Stormblood, I expected, I'm going to be queuing 20 minutes a time like usual. But no, most of the time it was about 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's been nice, really nice. Also, I'd like to know who these people are who keep giving player commendations to the guy with the gun.
It's probably because you're taking the longest to leave the dungeon and the tank and the healer already left.
That's probably true, actually.
Yeah, that's a typical explanation. Although it's not unusual for the DPS to get commendations if the tank does something that ticks off the group, or the healer does something that ticks off the group.
Yeah.
Usually, it will by default will go to the tank. The tank is the most likely person in the group to cause offense to somebody else in the group, so they will likely then bequeath it to the healer. If the healer then leaves the group, then it will go to the DPS. That's the usual route of commendations to the DPS. Although I found that red mages can pick up a lot of commendations because you can save totally scuffed runs where both the tank and healer are dead.
Yeah, you can. Like, just picking up the tank. So, yeah. You can do that as a summoner too, as well, come to think of it. But, yeah, I'm not going to complain because there's
Summon a
awards.
resurrection spell is an instant cast.
Oh, no, it's not.
You can basically chain together by using a short 1.5 cast or something. You can chain together multiple reses in quick succession as a red mage, and I don't think any other class can do that. You'll have nothing left in your mana pool at the end, but the group will be standing again.
Yeah. You just need to go and take a quick nap before you rejoin the fight, that's all. Yeah, I'm not going to complain that I'm getting commendations that probably should be going to a tank or healer, because, there's rewards for that. If you want commendations really quickly, though, to actually get those awards, play as a tank or a healer. What else? That's about it, honestly, for my week. It's just been work. Thankfully, with the renovation, or at least this phase of the renovations out of the way, maybe I'll get a little bit of time. Maybe. I only get one day off this week, so, yeah.
I implore you, the both of you, to maybe at least think for 5 minutes about playing a bit of Monster Hunter Stories.
I'm actually started chipping away at it again. I did
That's good.
Celtis Queen fight last night.
That's actually a really cool fight.
Celtis Queen is one of my favourite fights, and probably my favourite out of Monster Hunter 4. They did leave the cannibalism out, though.
That fight, I feel like, with the retrospect of looking back at the entire story, that of the storyline fights, that one in particular is the best positioned in terms of difficulty and tactics out of all of the fights in the game. That when you come up against that boss at that point, that it's at the right difficulty, at the right complexity, it's basically a perfect pitch.
Yeah, it was tough, but not overly tough. It was mostly more figuring out, okay, she's in a new stance, she's angry, and she's got the male on her back. Okay, what's she going to do? What do we need to adapt? All right, the male is dead, she's going to change again.
Yeah, I feel like it's really satisfying because you can sort of see the changes that are going to prompt changes in behavior and then adapt to them. It's not like you have less of a feeling like you're gambling because you can see when, oh, she's done this thing, that means that she's going to approach the next part differently, and oh, by process of elimination, she's done these things so far before, so when she makes this alteration, she's going to probably shift in this direction. Like you have a real good sense of, oh, well, I'm actually strategically predicting what's likely to happen next and then acting accordingly.
Yeah, like it's the groundwork for that was written when you do that first Zamtrios fight. But Celtis Queen takes everything you learn from that and then takes it up the next step. So it is a very, very good fight. But yeah, I'm glad they left the cannibalism out because you don't want a monster actually healing in one of these fights.
The closest thing to that is probably Zenoga has a similar sort of structure as a fight.
Yeah, I saw Zenoga there, and I was tempted to poke him with a stick, but I decided against it.
Zenoga's not actually too bad. The main difficulty that you typically have with Zenoga is his stats tend to be relatively high compared to other monsters at the same level, is what I found. Like, and my grimmest experience, of course, was the first time I poked my head into a high rank monster den. I didn't notice that there was a Stygian Zenoga standing behind me when I went to loot a nest.
Oh, you got squished?
Yeah, it didn't take very long.
Zenoga says no and objects to your presence.
It's not my fault that they decided to stick Stygian Zenoga on the starter island for high rank.
Yeah.
Because, like, as with the logical progression of most JRPGs, it's not uncommon to see this structure where you end up back at the start at the end, and the
Yeah.
final dungeon is located in the early zone. The problem is that when they distribute throughout the game the monsters from the final zone of the story, that puts a lot of the final monsters as well as the starting monsters in the same habitat when you move
Yep.
to high rank. So your chances of getting ambushed by a Stygian Zenoga or one of those desert Barioths or something, the really high tier things, which are proportionally high tier in high rank mode, they will be there alongside Velocidrome and Bulldrome and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Really doesn't seem fair. I don't see how this ecosystem could work.
I mean, you got plenty of prey. So,
Yeah, you are the prey.
it is still a good game. The story does kind of take a turn very shortly after you do Queen Celtis. Your writer actually shows a moment of personality, which is unheard of. Oh, what did I just do?
I don't know.
Apparently the shift just ends if you don't go to bed at the right time. Alright, fine. I'm waiting to be charged for overtime, though. So yeah, stories is still good. Yeah. That's all I can really say on that. I didn't play that enough of it to really progress along. It's just notable progress. I don't believe Queen Celtis is actually rideable either, unfortunately.
No, there are a lot of monsters that are not rideable that cause people to be outraged. Apparently, as it turns out from when I was looking around, Queen Celtis is a lot of people's favourite monster.
Queen Celtis is such an excellent fight in 4. And I can easily see why she'd be a lot of people's favourite. She's one of the few, though, who makes sense not to be a monster, because a lot of her mechanics involve summoning a male and having it sit on her head. So,
yeah, there are issues with that. But what is the excuse for Duramboros?
I don't know. You can't ride him for 5 minutes without throwing up? That's
surely he has alternative measures of locomotion than to spin.
No,
he
really
does have
doesn't.
legs. There's no reason that he has to be a flying monster.
He spends most of his time, if not spinning and attacking, then just sitting there.
I mean, I know he's not the most popular monster in the world.
I
I guess the reason
really like
he comes to mind is that Cotton from Rage Gaming, he's his favourite monster.
Yeah.
So yeah, severe heartbreak when it turns out that Duramboros is not rideable.
I can relate. I felt that. I really was looking forward to doing a Duramboros build.
Yeah, I didn't realise that he wasn't rideable, and I spent quite some time trying to get one to flee back to the den before I checked, because it just didn't occur to me that you wouldn't be able to ride it.
Yeah.
Similar thing happened with Tetsukabra.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tetsukabra is not. You can't ride. I want my bulldozer frog. Damn it!
Don't we see him being ridden by the head of the guild in Rise?
Yes.
So, what, do you have to be a short, fat midget?
I guess, and it has to be a baby Tetsukabra. So, yeah.
Some things don't make sense in that game. I don't know if they'll change any of it. Apparently, the stuff they've added is really, really cool, but it's gated behind the fact that your progression is very slow without co-op.
Yeah. I can easily start to see where co-op will come into play. What am I supposed to do?
Apparently the PvP scene was going to be real good, but it turns out that it's balanced about as well as you would expect from Monster Hunter, which is to say not at all. So the way it seems to operate is that online communities will hold their own sort of tournaments that they arrange with extensive ban lists. It basically works like Pokemon.
Yep.
Because there are certain moves that are just too powerful. Like, I think Rajang has got one that straight up gives like a 70% damage increase on the next move or something like that. Which is redonkulously OP.
Yeah.
So you tend to end up with, like, if you don't have a really lengthy ban list for genes and monsters, you end up with extremely homogenized meta because there are very few things that work. And you end up with like everybody has to have Velkhana in their party or whatever.
Yeah. You don't want that. That's bad. How do I get... Okay, the game's trying to tell me to take a reactor out of a ship now. I should probably actually be listening to the audio prompts on this. But I'm not going to! Alright, so that's basically my week then, is nonsense. Yeah, hopefully this coming week I'll actually have something to talk about. Maybe. Maybe. Anyway, Vol, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Wage cage.
Yeah.
The feel is real. I deeply resent my position as a member of the workforce. It is quite terrible, and I wish that it would stop. But it's not going to, is it?
Yep.
So I basically this week have been splitting my attention between farming Nerofest and playing a bit of Final Fantasy. Not as much as I would like, but you can't have everything, or in my case, much of anything because work. But I have basically backfooted the whole Guildfest thing, and I'm just coming to terms with the fact that I don't have time for this sort of crap. I've farmed about 24 lotto boxes or something, and frankly I'm more or less happy with that. I haven't done any of the events, but I just keep telling myself that, well, I could get tickets for doing it, but even if I did, I'm just going to get a mana prism out of it anyway, so why worry? Has more or less been my attitude. So yeah, probably when I'm going to be traveling up north to see my family tomorrow morning. So when I'm sitting around in a tiny town in the sticks with nothing to do, I might do a few of those bits and pieces, make sure I at least get any grails or laws that are floating around, and then call it good there. Basically, I'm not a fan of that event type. It's my least favorite. But from what I've heard online, it sounds like DW are of a similar point of view in that they're gradually coming to realise that people don't actually like having the hardest fights in the game bolted to the biggest grind in the game, and that people would prefer the two be separated, so that if you're going to be given really difficult challenge fights to solve as puzzles, that you not be actively taking away from the most valuable grinding time in the year cycle. So hopefully in future they will start splitting those events up, and they'll have a challenge event be a separate event from the lottery event. Because I actually kind of enjoy both in isolation. I mean, grinding is grinding. It's never going to be laugh a minute, but I do kind of like trying out lots of different teams to try and work out what will be the most efficient way of grinding through this. And then once you've settled on an efficient way of doing it, you can just do something else while you grind. So it's not actually a huge psychological burden. And likewise, I like doing the challenge quests when they are imaginative and interesting. And some of the ones that you get during Guildfest really are. But having the two at the same time, I really, really dislike, because they don't mesh at all. They're absolute opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of gameplay, and having to do them at the same time is mentally burdensome. So I always end up sacrificing one or the other. Like some years I'll do lots of challenge quests and only farm up the minimum number of lottery boxes. Other years I'll farm up tons of lottery boxes and not bother with the challenges. And considering how long and arduous the challenges are, coupled with the fact that there's no guarantee that any given person has got the roster to allow you to tackle them, and without a good helping of luck, generally speaking, I will let the challenge ones slide. I mean, it's just, I don't care that much about the bragging rights. I'm not part of any online fandom for FGO. I don't participate in those communities generally, so there's nobody for me to brag to about it. Yeah, so that's that. I'll write it out using what time I may to the end of it, it's best not to take gacha games too seriously because otherwise you'll get too invested and then you'll end up doing something unwise. So there's a reason I kicked all of the other gacha games that I was playing. Because remember, once upon a time, I was also playing Arknights and Girls Frontline and Azure Lane at the same time as FGO. And you cannot do that. You will die.
Yeah, do not do that. It didn't last long.
No, I eventually reduced it to Azure Lane and FGO, and I really enjoy both of those games. But ultimately, I had to pick one only, just one, because it's too time consuming to do more than one. I mean, I know people that are playing more than one. Like a guy I talk to online actively plays both FGO and Azure Lane, but he's also in Auckland, meaning he's under level 4 lockdown. So
he's not going anywhere.
What else is he going to do? So, yeah. The other major expenditure of my time entertainment-wise was Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm probably not as far through as Ari because I don't have the sort of free time he's got, but and of which I'm deeply envious. But I have made some progress, and I've seen some of the cool fights, and honestly, the whole Stormblood experience, like the first half of it, I was pretty lukewarm on when I played through it the first time. Years ago. I remember at the time, I don't really have any strong feelings about it now, but I remember at the time feeling like I had enjoyed the primary scenario for Heavensward a bit more than I had the primary scenario for Stormblood, because Stormblood was I felt was a little bit of a confused civil war on multiple fronts type of scenario. But the post game is really engaging and really cool. Like it seems to me like the best part of any expansion always seems to happen in the post main scenario.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why that is, but they always save the punchiest stuff for after the primary plot line is resolved.
It seems like in the main story they leave a lot of stuff building up, and in the post chapters after the main story is when they pay it all off to get ready for the next expansion.
I can't fault them for it because that's an extremely good retention strategy.
Oh yeah.
Like that's how you keep people interested and invested. People love that sort of stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. There's some really cool primal fights in there as well. I think pardon?
The petting zoo?
The petting zoo, yes. Those are particularly cool. I liked Tsukuyomi. I feel like that's a really, and considering like the position of the Tsukuyomi primal is basically this is your entry point to doing a whole ton of primals for the post story. I feel like they pitched the difficulty of that quite well to be in the hard mode at any rate, to be very, very doable, but still you need to do it right. Mm-hmm. Byakko was interesting. I was unable to decide if it was one of the coolest primal fights I had ever done or one of the silliest primal fights I've ever done, so why not both?
I mean, does Gilgamesh count? No, not Gilgamesh. Well, sort of.
He's more ridiculous than anything in the game before him.
He's completely nonsense. No,
the thing with the
Typhon.
Typhon
and Ultros fight.
The thing with the Byakko fight is that it's basically it's Danmaku the trial.
Oh no!
Everything is Danmaku mechanics. They're not difficult ones, but everything is Danmaku mechanics. You're constantly dodging patterns of balls, and you're even flying through the air while you do it, like in Toho. There's an entire phase of the fight where everybody gets flung into the air and are falling as of a great height. And you are basically, and Byakko is falling as well, and you've basically got to move around the sort of the column of air that you're falling through, dodging the things that he flings at you as you go.
I see. That does sound kind of fun.
Yeah, so you point your camera down because he's falling below you, and you gotta get out of the way of the stuff he chucks up at you.
Sounds so cool. I wish I had time.
It's really cool and really imaginative, and like the thing that it sort of kind of really ticks me off about people who are really, really strongly in favor of the World of Warcraft raid boss style. And it's like, yes, it's true. World of Warcraft uses its environments much more than Final Fantasy as raid mechanics, and their baseline in terms of creativity of raid mechanics tends to be a little bit higher than the baseline in Final Fantasy. But when they both go balls to the wall, Final Fantasy blows WoW out of the water in terms of raid mechanics.
Oh, it does. Absolutely does.
Like, they are willing to go so much further out of the box.
Yeah. Even just small things like soundtracks. Whoops. That went bang.
I don't remember a single boss music from World of Warcraft.
No, I don't either. There's maybe 3 or 4 tracks in WoW total that are memorable.
Went out of my way to farm a mount for the music in this game.
Yeah, like Tsukiyomi, for example. She's got an absolutely banging soundtrack. I love it, even if it is singing about Wayward Pie. But if you actually get the subtitles turned on for the soundtrack, it tells the story of Tsukiyomi and why you're fighting her, basically. In musical form. It's really cool.
There's lots of really cool, really memorable ones. Like, everybody remembers Titan's music. Everybody remembers
Titan.
Shiva's music. Everybody remembers Sephiroth as well if they did that fight.
Yeah.
But yeah,
say my name.
Everybody remembers Ravana. Like, they're all very, very, very filled with character. And generally speaking, the music in Final Fantasy XIV is a cut above every other MMO on the market. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, whereas WoW, you turn it off.
I love in Final Fantasy how they're not afraid to use lyrics. So many fantasy style or MMO style games are afraid to include music with lyrics as background noise.
Alexander, the whole dungeon itself uses lyrics throughout its run. That way, when you run into the Super Sentai boss, it mashes the whole lot together into one giant lyric song.
Yes, the whole thing is so silly, but that's the big advantage to Final Fantasy as a setting, is that it is absolutely comfortable with being completely silly as well as absolutely serious, as well as like ridiculously chuny edgy. Like, every part of the spectrum is covered therein.
Yeah.
I like that you said chuny edgy as this guy rubs his hand over his face to pull up his little magic mask.
Yeah, this is a universe where Hildebrand and Gilgamesh exist, but also the entirety of the Garlean War.
Yeah, it's like the end of Stormblood has like, we're issuing in a new era of war crimes where the evil empire is going to gas the inferior breeds of humans. Like,
yeah,
we're getting into pretty dark territory here, but yeah, there's just that's able to happily coexist with the absurdities which are also present in Final Fantasy. And so they've got a lot more creative room, whereas World of Warcraft is overly concerned with maintaining the World of Warcraft style. And honestly, that style really needs to be put out to pasture at this point.
Yeah, like, WoW can be silly and has been silly in the past, and it's been good fun when it does, but it just doesn't do it nearly enough.
Rapu.
Basically, everything involving the goblins, at least early on, was very, very silly.
Yeah, I feel like they're just not adventurous enough, and I think that's probably because our boy Bobby is in charge, and not just him specifically, but I mean in the sense of there is a overbearing corporate structure, leaving the development team very little room to breathe, and as such, that development team over time has been refined into a team that doesn't take risks. Has been refined into a team that have every drop of creativity has been squeezed out of them, because they have to stay within these narrow confines of what the higher ups are willing to permit for the sake of their shareholders.
Yeah.
Whereas the environment that Square Enix has permitted for Final Fantasy XIV is very different, because Yoshi P earned the right to make unilateral decisions.
He had Sony's executives and the prior dev team put out something, and then he himself came in and said, "All right, watch this," and he fixed it. And so I imagine at Sony higher up, they're like, okay, last time we tried to run stuff for Yoshi P, or tried to do this, make this video game ourselves, it was a total disaster. Just let Yoshi and his team do what he wants.
I don't know if this sort of thing, that sort of decision could ever be made as a decision as part of a plan. I really do feel that it happened as Ari said, in that Yoshi P proved, because of the circumstances that he was dropped in to salvage a dying project, he proved that he knew better. That he did not need to have this overbearing oversight of a whole bunch of planners and bureaucrats and accountants, and that left to his own devices, he was able to create the phenomenon that exists today, without the interference of other people, being allowed to operate the system under his own principles. And those principles have held the game in very good stead. And the big difference in terms of management, is that Square Enix have been willing to take the W. They're just willing to take the W. They aren't in World of Warcraft. They had the W already. World of Warcraft in its early stage was very, very successful. It has gotten steadily less so the more interference there has been from above, because they're always unwilling to take the W and always trying to squeeze just one extra drop of money out for the next quarter's earnings report.
There is another argument I saw put forward actually over the last week in a video by Josh Strife Hayes. If you haven't watched his stuff about MMOs, I highly recommend it. But basically, is when WoW really succeeded, it solved the MMO. So we suddenly had this working pattern, and since then, there's been no deviation from it. So,
But,
yeah, that's actually...
Within this formula, though, there's still stuff to experiment with and try out. And the petting zoo bosses all, I think, exemplify what you can do just experimenting in raid mechanics, because all the petting zoo bosses do stuff I wouldn't expect WoW to do ever in their boss fights, in just the hard modes. Like, you have to play Simon Says on one while you're fighting the boss and doing all the boss mechanics for the Suzaku fight.
Well, it's sort of like reverse Simon Says. No, you have to do everything that Simon doesn't say.
Yeah, so you have to do reverse Simon Says while still doing the boss fight, and oh, by the way, there's holes all over the place that you're gonna fall into and die.
Yeah, but
a crude description of what Ari's talking about is that there's a mechanic in the latter part of the fight where there is an ad that you cannot fight that flies in a circle around the arena. Lining that circle through its path are a whole bunch of characters, like Oriental style characters. I don't know if they're real characters or not within the setting.
They're color coded though.
Yeah, they're color coded as well for people that can't read them or won't be able to identify them quickly enough. And basically, the ad will fly through these in sequence, and every time it hits one of them, the portion of the floor that has that symbol and that color will explode.
That sounds perfect.
So
safe.
you need to look and see what characters this thing is going to fly through and not be there throughout the course of the fight while doing the other mechanics.
And she has one-shot mechanics out the wazoo because all the crap knocks back, and it's huge, and there is nowhere safe to stand.
You are fighting on a donut in the sky.
Ah,
yes,
safety.
The inner and outer ring of the donut are holes. And you will die.
And this is the baby's story mode version of the fight.
Yeah.
This is not the real version of the fight. This is the one for the plebs like me who don't have time to get good at the game.
Yeah. Like Leviathan was another one too, like that. Like he just gets in there and he just starts throwing water over the arena, and if you're not near the edge, you're going to die. They put railings up for easy mode. They're gone for hard mode.
Yeah, that's what Siryu does, except he takes it up to 11.
Yeah.
Seiryu was one that we absolutely clowned it. We clowned it badly in my group.
Honk.
And
oh yeah,
we had one tank and one healer left standing, and we managed to recover from that. Everybody needed to be rezzed.
Oh no.
We managed to perfectly synchronize the giant coming out of the water to smack the left side of the platform, and the wave coming from the right side that was going to push us all right into the giant's arm.
How did you manage that?
I think we did a very specific DPS screw up where we just happened to line that up. And so everybody managed to do the mechanic right, and it didn't matter.
Yeah,
You still got schooled.
Like there are hard enrages in Final Fantasy 14, but every boss basically has an enrage based on the cooldown between mechanics will get shorter and shorter as the fight goes on. So you'll see more and more overlaps and increasingly complex patterns. So it's everything. Every fight will have a limit on how long you can draw it out for, which I suppose is the trade-off that they have decided to implement for having infinity battle reses.
Mm. Yeah, sooner or
honestly,
later, the fight will
I like
become
that system better.
undoable.
I like the system of infinite battle reses better. I think that the restriction on battle reses that World of Warcraft implemented is a crutch for not knowing how to deal with your own mechanics.
Yeah.
It also means people that are out ruin the fight immediately, and you might as well just wipe it up if you die.
That whole structure I feel is very. I don't really want to phrase it in these terms, but the easiest way to say it is that it's immersion breaking. Like you aren't actually balls to the wall fighting to the last man the way you should. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh, things have slightly not gone to plan. Let's just wipe it up and start over. There's no recoverability.
Yeah, if things go pear-shaped in Final Fantasy, you can attempt to salvage it. You may not be successful, but at least everybody's at their keyboard or controller playing until it happens.
And if you manage it, it's a much better moment.
Yeah, you can pull off clutch moments and manage to pull it out sometimes. But you have the option to keep trying and keep playing Final Fantasy. It's not, oh, somebody died and we don't have any battle reses. Oh, well, all right, let's just start over.
Yep.
I mean, maybe I'm sure at the top tier, you can maybe afford one death, if that. But when the erase timers are so tight. But for every other level of play, you can still salvage a run if things start to go pear-shaped if you just res people.
Yeah,
Well,
there's always options.
The big difference, I suppose, structurally with Final Fantasy is that there's a bit when it comes to the real top end raid fights, there's a very, very, very heavy emphasis on the opener. Like if you can get your opener right, that front loads so much of your damage that it basically permits you screw ups later, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like a screw up which happens after your opener doesn't hurt you as much as a screw up during your opener would be. So you still have a certain amount of recoverability there, since your ability to make an enrage depends so heavily on you executing the initiation of the fight well.
Yeah. Also, you have the limit break system, which I find is really good for that. Like, a well-placed healer or tank limit break can save a run.
I'm not sure whether or not they balance around the use of them. It would be nice if they didn't.
I think they balance around the use of a DPS limit break.
I remember reading there was one boss fight in Alexander, maybe it was Coil, that balanced around a tank limit break, and it was necessary to use one.
Yeah. But by and large,
it's okay if you do that once in a while, I think.
Yeah, by and large, it's the DPS that should be using them. But yeah, you can save a run with it.
When you see that clutch victory, that comes as a result of a healer bringing the group back from the brink.
It's a moment.
It's definitely a moment. It's definitely the stuff of legends.
But yeah. So where are you up to in Stormblood so I can pace what I say without spoiling anything?
I've just done. I've started Shadowbringers, and okay. I've done the first bit of plotline where I went out to the desert to meet LSA.
Okay, I'm just barely past you then.
Yeah, and I've seen the absolute freaking horrific process of somebody getting turned into a Sin Eater.
Yeah, that cutscene is horrifying, and her face during it, holy crap. You get to see most of the transformation. That's another thing Final Fantasy XIV does.
This is the demonstration that Final Fantasy XIV can legitimately do horror.
Yeah, it's another thing. You get a little bit of this in quests like Hildebrand, where they really play with the facial expressions.
I'm not sure that counts. That's gurning, is what that is.
This is Top Gary's mod stuff here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to see it used in a real Nightmare Fuel context with a Sin Eater transformation. Yeesh. It is, and they show you really what they can do. Because in WoW, if you just have played WoW before as your main MMO, you're used to the models being mostly static and not able to move. But Final Fantasy XIV is able to mold faces and other body parts with limited choreography when it really wants to show off something. and they do it in this transformation sequence with re- emphasized model stretching and warping of the face and effects on the face and what's happening to it, and the body being melted down.
Yeah.
I could live quite happily without having to see that again, TBH. It's pretty horrifying. But I mean, that's the point.
Yeah. It also points to something that Final Fantasy does that other MMOs don't do because it's focused on storytelling. They actually have cinematography that you really start to come into its own near the end of Heavensward, where they really start playing with proper camera angles and shots for the cutscenes.
Mm.
So, like, this whole time, you're getting proper horrific camera angles to make this as awful as possible the whole time during this scene.
Yeah, anytime they aren't doing like a full formal cutscene in World of Warcraft, it's like everybody is in the mid shot.
Yeah. And they're just kind of standing around.
Basically, from the final battle of Postgame Heavensward onwards, every cutscene has at least limited cinematography that goes into deciding where the camera shots go.
Yeah, whoops.
Which is just something nice I noticed that is different from other MMOs and helps get you more into the story.
Yeah, just a little bit of camera work can make all the difference.
No, it's about storytelling.
Yeah,
they're generally trying to tell a story. They're not making a game in which there happens to also be a story, which is World of Warcraft's approach.
A story which they can't keep consistent from one cutscene to another.
Yeah, I think that they're underestimating the number of people that are being driven away from World of Warcraft, not by the mechanics, but by just how deeply unengaging the story is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the characters are a thing to attach to, and if you've completely butchered that, you've just cut off another thing for people to attach to, and there's going to be a chunk of players that really want to use that as their anchor point.
I mean, back when Sylvanas was just sort of the haughty and distant Banshee Queen, she had a lot of devotees in the player base, but now that she's this person who keeps getting her personality revamped every 5 minutes, nobody really cares about her anymore.
No.
She doesn't have fans anymore. There used to be like real fans of Sylvanas, people who really thought that she was cool and that she was the best leader. Nobody thinks that anymore because she's not the same person.
No.
She's never the same person for more than 5 minutes.
It's barely a person anymore.
There were real fights that took place in forums over whether or not Varian was a good leader or whether he was a warmongering psychopath, and that was because people cared enough to have that discussion. Nobody cares that much about Anduin. Nobody cares about Anduin at all.
Manduin now.
He's still a manlet.
He is still a manlet.
But yeah, so yeah, I've made some progress on Final Fantasy. I'd very much love to spend more time playing it. Unfortunately, my laptop cannot handle the jandal. It's just not going to be a possibility for me. I don't think I could try installing it, but I think my laptop would have a hernia.
Yeah, you might be able to play it on potato mode. It is very forgiving when you crank everything right down.
Yeah, but I have to actually get it to work first. My laptop is very decrepit.
Oh dear.
Its battery can hold a charge for maybe 15 minutes while switched off.
Oh dear.
I'm not even sure where the electricity goes. It's like, I paid for that electricity. Where did it go? But
actually, my laptop's battery is just dead at this point. I've replaced it once, and then the second one's died as well. So, yay.
Yeah, so Stormblood has another battery of, make sure you get a snack and a drink because you're going to be watching cutscenes for a while.
This is going to take some time.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those bits at the end. They've got quite a nice ending dungeon, as opposed to having some complex main scenario ending or a ridiculously difficult primal fight at the end or anything like that. They've just got quite a nice 5-man dungeon, sort of Keeper of the Lake styles. I don't know what it was like when it came out in terms of difficulty, but it seemed like it was a pretty challenging dungeon. The group that I had in there, I think we were all new. We didn't know what was going on, and we had to learn it the hard way because, like, it seemed like 2 or 3 of us had watched a video beforehand, so we had a rough idea what to do. But of course, we hadn't really experienced it before.
Sounds like a recipe for clownery.
We had some wipes. We made some mistakes, but we got back up and we got through the fight the old-fashioned way. I did have to to salvage some runs where everybody died but me because they happened to stand in the wrong place. Like I think that they'd watched a different guide to me because
Okay.
they tried to group up and tank a particular tank buster using Passage of Arms, whereas I ran to the very edge of the arena and just evaded it entirely, and so I was standing and they weren't. But then I did my red mage thing and used my dual cast to resurrect the group, and then we pulled it out. We got there in the end.
Nice.
So yeah, it was quite an old school dungeon experience, one that I haven't had in Final Fantasy in a while since I've been playing catch up so much. But yeah, good times. I really enjoyed the way Stormblood was brought to a conclusion and everything that happened, and the sort of it had that kind of ominous atmosphere building in the background throughout the end of it. Like you don't have a sense that all's right with the world and that you're waiting for the next expansion to come along at all. You have a sense that everything is gradually falling apart and you're powerless to do anything about it, despite the fact that you are like this great hero. You just don't know how to stop what's going on because all of the things that are going bad are either things that you don't understand or things that are on a geopolitical level are just outside your ability to manipulate.
Yeah, I'm glad for that bit of storytelling, actually. The Warrior of Light is not infallible.
The Warrior of Light is also indisposed at the moment, while a whole bunch of very important stuff is happening in Eorzea, and they just can't do anything about it.
Yeah. So you're not some sort of legendary hero of the Land Mary Sue. You're just someone who can fight good.
Well, you are a legendary hero of the Land Mary Sue. It's just unfortunately the bad guys also are.
Yeah.
Like there's Xenos is would definitely be a Mary Sue if he was a good guy.
He's got the hair for it.
Well, yeah, I mean he's the long-haired pretty boy, but he's also, as far as I can tell, basically indestructible.
Yeah, he just doesn't seem to do anything. You try and hurt him, and he just kind of says, no.
And this carries on and on and on and on and on. Like he seems to be impossible to put down.
Is it the edgy armor?
Appears just to be a normal dude with little in the way of magically granted superpowers. He
doesn't have magic. He doesn't have magic at all. He's Garlean. None of them can use magic.
Well,
he's just raw OP-ness.
Yeah,
like, but he's like everything that he's capable of is just basically due to him being a psychopath who does nothing but train to kill people, because that's his thing.
He's horrible even to people who are really horrible.
What?
No, he's convinced that you're his friend though. By the end of the main scenario, he considers you to be his best and only friend.
I just made an attempt at his life.
The feeling is not mutual.
No.
It's just what besties do, according to him.
Besties occasionally try to kill each other. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know where he learned that, but he's clearly not normal. The boy ain't right.
Yes.
What is with Stormblood? And for lack of a better term, it's overabundance of crazy bitches. Like, everywhere you go, every zone has one.
Someone who's completely unhinged?
Every faction has one.
Yeah, you've got Fordola, you've got Suzaku, you've got Yotsuyu.
You got the Steps lady who I forget, the black one.
Oh right, yeah. It's a short name. I think it starts with S.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I really enjoyed the scene where the Sun King dude, what's his name, tries to hit on Y'shtola.
Oh, that would go well.
Yeah, she shoots him down.
What does she use? Heavy caliber?
No. She just passes comment on him in such a way that it's clearly no big deal to her. This is like the sort of dismissal that you would get from somebody who basically spends all her time dismissing people.
I read it a little more brutal than that, where she's basically saying, "Come back when you're a man, little boy."
Well, yeah, that's the whole point.
That's brutal.
as unbelievably condescending to the point that he's probably never been condescended to so hard in his entire life.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
Like early on in the story, particularly Realm Reborn, Ishola's actually a fairly nice person. She's not so much at this point.
She's seen some shit at this point.
She's died a couple of times.
Well, actually, she has stopped seeing a lot of shit at this point.
Yeah, I can never remember whether or not. Like, I for a moment I was like wondering, did they actually cure her blindness or anything? Was she permanently blind? I don't even remember.
I don't know.
I saw a joke about how in one scene of the Endwalker trailer you can see her walking into a desk, and it's like, oh, Y'shtola really is blind.
So that's kind of a plot thread that seems to have just stopped.
Well, it's established she can use ether to have magic eyes, so
effectively she's blind, but not really.
I think
spending life force in order to not be blind.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should probably go to a break.
We probably should, because I'm doing unspeakable things to this spaceship.
All right.
Oh my.
Here's some music, folks. We will be right back. And we're back.
Eels.
And I continue to chase Vol around on my Sparkle Pony.
Speaking of Sparkle Ponies, you did things.
Still Vol's week, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm more or less done, other than to say that the biggest, other than my lack of time, the biggest impediment to my progress through this game is the fact that I keep finding things to distract me.
There's a lot of that.
There's lots of things that I just want to do that I just don't really have the time to if I want to progress through. Like, I've still got my katana that I'm working on, my relic weapon from level 50. And
that was
I
an
would like
quest.
I would like to eventually progress it all the way to the end, and then, you know, to do some others like my bravura and that as well. To also to get them through to the final stage, because one of the things that happens with the relic weapons is that once you have completed a relic weapon, like done the entire course all the way through to the end, you gain access to be able to buy every step as a glamour.
So some of them are really freaking cool.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the downsides, I guess, of the relic weapon system is the simple fact that sometimes you'll upgrade to a weapon that looks less cool than the one you just had.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I'm partway through that grind at the moment, and I really shouldn't be wasting time on it. But since the show is currently going, I might try and make a little bit of progress at least.
I wouldn't mind if one thing they do change about Final Fantasy XIV is just co-opt WoW's glamour system, the transmogs. Well, that's something at least WoW did right.
No, I think that that the advantages offered by the Final Fantasy system offset any of the disadvantages that they've got compared to WoW's one. Like, for instance, you can attach a glamour plate to one of your gear layouts, and then it will, as soon as you switch to that gear layout, it will automatically add all of the glamours to that set. So anytime you're in a non-combat zone, you can glamour in the field.
Yes, yeah, definitely keep that bit. Now I'm more referring to the just instead of having all the messing around with the wardrobe, the armoire, the armor spheres, and all of that, just have the catalogue where if you've had a piece of gear in the past, it's there.
That's a nice feature, but there's so much that's missing from WoW's transmog system that make it such complete trash compared to the Final Fantasy XIV one, that if I had to pick one or the other as they currently are, I would pick 14s every time. Yep. I would rather go and hunt the gear than have to sacrifice the inability to constantly re-glamour things, to sacrifice my ability to produce and store multiple outfits that I can change on the fly, that sort of thing. Like, WoW has that one good feature where you automatically get transmogs added when you pick up a piece of gear with one you don't have, but in exchange, everything else about the system is difficult to use and annoying and expensive.
Yeah, give us that. That's the important bit. So,
I need to go buy more glamour prisms.
Unfortunately, yeah, because as the game's gone on, there's so many good things that you want to keep for glamours, and that's for one class. If you want to try to do it for multiple classes, good luck.
The only thing I would change about Final Fantasy XIVs is let us dump stuff in the glamour chest from the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, having to lug it back to an inn can be a bit of a pain, but those are all small niggles compared to what the system is capable of doing. Like, the thing is that we know that the system can be improved because the glamour system is so much better than it was when it was introduced.
Oh, definitely.
When it was introduced, it was significantly worse than the World of Warcraft one, and now it is significantly better than the World of Warcraft one. So they clearly have an interest in improvement for its own sake.
Well, fashion is a market in and of itself, as before it died, PSO2 displayed.
People will take any opportunity to not wear their own pants.
Or any pants.
Or any pants whatsoever.
See that guy in Limsa, who's always there.
He is always there.
This guy's a manta ray. I want a manta ray.
I want a manta ray. Those manta rays are pretty cool.
So, yeah. Uh, my week's just going to tangent off more Final Fantasy 14. If you don't have anything else, Fall, we can segue into it.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm about done talking about it.
All right. It's been a fairly standard work week for me, so I don't have much to say on that front.
Yeah,
A
but
bunch of
your work is seasonal.
yeah. So it's been a light week for the whole year, but an average week for this time of year. So not too terribly much. The stuff I did think I was going to have going on is actually next week. It got moved, and we can thank Atlanta for that. Hate you, Atlanta. Really do. They're currently in coof panic mode because of tomfoolery that's going on. The city has different management than the state does, and they can supersede the state in some areas, and that includes lockdown conditions because our governor's too cowardly to push a special session to write up some laws to make them stop this.
I don't get your governor. Like,
he's a retard. Like, I don't mean this as like the modern insult that people use now. I mean, he's genuinely stupid. He's slow. He doesn't understand things very quickly.
the thing is that he doesn't seem to realize that when you constantly talk the talk and then fail to walk the walk, and you do this consistently over and over again in plain view of everybody, that people will just eventually dismiss you as not worth it.
Yeah. So he's got shoes. But so I've had a bit of time this week. Next week I'll be have a few days that are busy. But I spent all my free time this week, since I don't have a mobile game that I dump any of my time into. I token log on to Pinecone for like 10 minutes to do stuff for Abos Guild, and that's about it for mobile games. I've been able to dedicate all my time to Final Fantasy 14.
I just remembered something I did this week, but carry on. We'll come back to that.
Okay. And have been basically mono-focused on the main story with a few sidetracks. The big sidetrack for optional quests I did was the petting zoo that we talked about earlier. And I genuinely liked all these fights. I'm very glad I took the side story to go do the petting zoo.
That's why I went out of my way to recommend that you and Fern not miss it, because the fights are just really fun and refreshing.
Yeah, they're all really cool fights. We talked about them all before, so I don't need to reiterate any of them. But I think, despite how hair-pulling she is and tense she is, Suzaku's my favorite of the bunch. Just because,
yeah, I think I enjoyed Suzaku's the most as well, on balance. Although they're all very good fights.
Yeah, I think Siri is the weakest, but is still a really good fight.
Yeah, well, it's because it's a sort of it's a minion based fight, but in practice that doesn't result in anything particularly new. But it's a very well constructed fight as far as those types of fights are concerned.
And Byakko has the best spectacle by far of all of them. He's clearly the most experimental, but it's a lot of fun. I just love his design too. How we go from a tiger to a man with a tiger hand,
like an eldritch horror looking creature.
Yeah, he turned. Did you ever have Transformers Beast Wars toys?
I did enjoy that.
I do, in fact, have many of them at my parents' house.
That's what he reminded me of.
Yeah, he does kind of, actually. Now that you mention it.
So he's a cool dude, and his fight is just a lot of fun. So I had a lot of fun with the. I think my controller's dying because I'm auto running into a wall. But. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with the petting zoo. They're actually, the Chinese or the Eastern animals at the cardinal directions, but you go to a petting zoo under the volcano for the quest turn in. So that's
it's that part is like the four lords are based on the four cardinal creatures of geomancy, but the basic theory underlying the story is the Japanese one of yokai, where any creature that lives sufficiently long enough will become sort of a lesser god.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although the same also applies to objects as it does to animals, which is something that you run into in the Beast Tribe quest associated with Soroban's race. I can't remember what they're called all of a sudden.
Oh, bro. The Kojin.
Yeah, the Kojin.
Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, in the Kojin Beast Tribe storyline, you run into the equivalent for objects,
Oh dear.
where an object or a tool or implement that is used or at least exists for a sufficient period of time will eventually develop its own type of sentience and power.
Yeah. You see this first with the Susano fight. So I think that's actually where we left off with me going through stuff last week. So I picked up from the Susano fight and continued onwards. Lakshmi was really boring. I don't like her fight.
I don't really understand. Like she when she appears later in that solo scenario, I feel like that's a much better executed use of that primal.
Well, she's a real proper solo boss fight there.
Yeah,
With
as a conventional primal, she's just kind of dull, especially compared to the other ones around her. Like, to be fair, she would still be exceptional for a World of Warcraft boss.
Yeah, she has a lot going on and a lot of stuff to dodge, but it's just missing a little bit of flair to it.
Yeah, it doesn't have the sort of punch of like the scenario where Susano brings his sword down and then everybody's got to try and push it back before it crushes the tank.
Yeah, so it's missing a lot of that. I get the feeling I am playing the game a bit too late to really understand and enjoy Shinryu.
Yeah, the Shinryu was 100%. Its impact is sort of like it's sort of similar to, you never did Praetorium when it was current content, did you?
No,
Praetorium when it was current content, when it was just new and nobody had gear, everybody was finishing the story. That was actually a boss. Like, it wasn't a hard boss, but it was a boss, and you would die if you got hit by its stuff.
Yeah,
it's sort of like that. Shinryu, we blew Shinryu to pieces because everybody was overgeared for it. But when I was doing it, that fight was like 12 minutes long, and everybody died constantly.
Yeah, you had a PTSD going into this boss.
Yeah, and I'm gradually recovering from it now that I've seen Shinryu get stomped into the dirt. But when all of my memories of it are for it being an all evening proposition to kill Shinryu, because you're always in there with a group of randoms, although eventually I scavenged up some people from my free company to come with me because I needed to tilt the fight in favor of people who wouldn't die to the first mechanic. Because every mechanic in that fight was basically lethal. If you got hit by something, you died. You needed to do the dance perfectly in order to get to the end of it. There was none of this scenario where almost everybody in the fight has item level 400. That wasn't a thing.
So I'll dump in live show chat. As we've been doing these dungeons together, I will occasionally, if there's a lot of mechanics, I will write cliff notes for myself and whoever I'm running it with while I'm watching Mistech's video. And there's a whole lot going on in the Shinryu fight. I just dumped my cliff notes for that. Please tell me I deleted some choice words from my cliff notes. Yes, I did.
The thing is, at the power level that we were at when we did it this time, when there's so much water has gone under the bridge since, we just skipped tons of mechanics. Lots of stuff just didn't happen. Whereas you would see pretty much every move that he could do multiple times when I was doing it. I must have spent hours in Royal Menagerie back when I was playing when Stormblood was new, but I probably only actually killed Shinryu maybe a handful of times because it just took so long to do that fight.
Yeah. And something I've done the first dungeon of Stormblood, which is right after the LSA Alphino split off quests. It's immediately afterwards. So as soon as you finish those two quest lines, the obligatory new expansion. Here's a split quest line to go to two different zones to get you some.
I don't know why they do that. Like, it doesn't have any impact on anything really. I chose LSA first because I wasn't particularly eager to re-engage with Alphino, and I haven't done Alphinos yet. But
you weren't looking forward to him smugging at you?
Well, Alphinoing. It's not really smug. It's just Alphinoing.
It's like you need to take a break and make a sandwich while he's speaking, and then he'll get back to find he's told you exactly one thing.
Yeah. So I had the exact opposite reasoning. I did him first to get him out of the way.
Well, I sort of like felt I sort of felt emotionally I was a bit worried about LSA because she seemed to be really falling apart by the
Yeah,
end of Stormblood.
made her even worse after the events that happened in her story.
Yeah,
Holy
like she's had a rough time of it.
Yeah, she's. I'm wondering what's going to be up with her. Her mental health cannot be in a good spot right now. But yeah, getting to the first dungeon of Shadowbringers when people aren't at cap item level for the content, those fights last a while in dungeons, and I haven't really, since I very first started playing, I haven't been able to do dungeons at gear appropriate with a full team of people that are gear appropriate. So going into my very first Shadowbringers dungeon and having nobody overgeared for it and everybody at gear level coming out maybe at 400, all of those fights took forever.
That's
And
how it used to be for everything.
Yeah,
There's a
so-
lot of mechanics going through the previous content. There's a lot of mechanics you will have never seen.
Yeah.
Because they just don't happen when the fights are as short as they are. And unfortunately, the side effect of this is that a lot of people just don't know their class mechanics very well because they won't get through more than maybe one rotation of their skills per fight. And so their ability to learn has been sort of curtailed.
Yeah, it also sets expectations for how long dungeons are going to take. I thought this would take maybe 45 minutes if it's a really long dungeon. No, this place took an hour.
Yeah, it's very much when you're doing it totally fresh, totally at level. A lot of these dungeons end up being like old school World of Warcraft dungeons. That's why this place is so popular with WoW refugees. Is because if you're playing it in current content and you're properly item level appropriate, it feels like old WoW dungeon crawls.
Yeah. So none of this is a bad thing, by the way. It's just something that will stick out to you as soon as you get to Shadowbringers. Is that you're not zipping through dungeons anymore, especially if you're coming from the position I'm at, where you've started stop the game and you're just blowing through the main story content now after years of being stuck in Mordona in A Realm Reborn.
Yeah.
By
So,
Return to the Waking Sands.
Yeah, there's actually a fate in the new desert area called Pray Destroy the Waking Sands. I stopped what I was doing and went and did that fate immediately, twice.
Because it's mandatory. You got to do it.
Yeah. So that was something that jumped out at me. Oh, and where was I with my notes on this thing? All right. The dungeons. Hell's Lid's a really cool dungeon for getting to the petting zoo. I really like that dungeon. Just the aesthetic of the whole dungeon with the lava walls peeling back and the monsters that are in there.
And it's also very varied. Like, it's not just, this is the fire dungeon. It's going to be fire all the way through.
Yeah. It's only fire for the first third to half, and then you go into a cave system and you fight a ferret.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Yeah, the second boss is a ferret.
It's a Kamaitachi. A sickle weasel.
Ah.
So you can talk to him after the fight in the petting zoo.
He seems kind of butthurt that you fought him, though.
So he's totally a tsundere ferret, don't worry. He totally likes you. But
Right.
But yeah, that place is cool. The burn, I like the mechanics of this dungeon, but I don't like the aesthetic at all. And I think
what would there be to like? How would you like physically? How is it physically possible to like it?
Well, that's what I mean. I get what they're going for. I know what they're doing. It doesn't. It's so icky to look at because there's literally nothing, and then you're in a Magitech facility, and then back to literally nothing. Although I did accidentally kill myself on the last boss.
That was
I actually didn't see most of that fight because I lagged out. My internet crapped itself, and it crapped itself on the second. I think I saw all the bosses, but I lagged out during one of the boss fights, and by the time I got back, they were wiping on the last boss, and yeah, I spawned in the middle of the boss fight, and I'm like, wow, what is going on? So, and I didn't have a normal experience with that dungeon, but it seemed to me like that final boss would have been quite challenging, gear appropriate.
Yeah, The way I accidentally killed myself, he has a mechanic where he will transition into a mist phase, and he'll spawn 3 dragon heads around the room.
You didn't keep fighting the mists, did you?
No, I was doing my dance because I was doing it as a dancer when he transitioned into a mist phase, and you can't stop the dance after you've started, and the dance does AoE no matter what.
But a boogie.
Oh. And
And-
the mist reflects, doesn't it?
It does worse than reflect. It freezes you and puts you entombed in ice and does a colossal amount of damage.
Oh dear.
And so it froze me right in an AoE, and we did not have the DPS to kill the heads. So I took a big chunk of damage. The heads exploded because I was frozen, and, then I died. So if you are a dancer in that fight, pray watch the video that you might know when the mist form is coming.
Know when to
and do
stop your
not-
dance.
And do not be dancing when the transition happens, otherwise you will kill yourself and probably the group. So there's that. Let's see, what else? The Gimlet Dark we talked about before. That was a fun dungeon. It's fun running through with all and meeting all the story people. And we weren't really sure what to do either with my group, but we kind of just took it one thing at a time. The last fight in that dungeon got so much crap on the screen, on the board sometimes, that I just would have to guess where to stand. And I'm convinced I only survived because of my dumb luck.
I'll take it.
I felt like by the time my group and I managed to get through that fight, I felt like I had a really good handle on it, and that we were actually doing things the way they were supposed to be done.
Yeah. So that was an interesting one. And then let's see. The first dungeon of Shadowbringers was a good, fun introductory dungeon. It was my first experience getting back to a gear appropriate dungeon, which was interesting. And this made all the fight mechanics very important, and I'm glad I paid close attention during the Mistake video. And there is a mechanic in Shadowbringers for dungeons that's really weird. I didn't try it, but you go to the dungeon, and there will be story-relevant NPCs there that you can take as a group instead, if you should choose to. I don't know if it scales it or anything, but I did not do this. I did it proper, with a full group. And the fights in there, while none of them are particularly challenging, their yuck tends to cover the entire platform you're working on. And there'll be one itty-bitty safe spot in a wonky spot that I hope you watch the video to figure out where it is. It appeared my group was, while all still being relatively new, had all at least watched the video because we all knew where the spot was. So that one's important to watch the video and pay attention to what's not lit up in yuck. But there's a lot of cool fights in there. It's very bright, as I imagine a lot of Shadowbringers dungeons are going to be. But you just kind of get that aesthetic here. It's a cool little starter dungeon, and I'm interested to see what more Shadowbringers has for dungeons. Was there any other trials that stuck out? Tsukiyomi I died in because I wasn't counting my stacks. And moved too late.
Yeah, I think it's very forgiving in hard mode though. Like if you decided to move every time, it would be fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't punish you for doing that. There's a similar mechanic that I remember from Mythic, Tomb of Sargeras, that is much less forgiving, and is a real clown fiesta when done incorrectly, but it features prominently in one of my favorite gag videos of a raid, because you can cause a lot of havoc by just dancing backwards and forwards between the dividing lines between dark and light in that fight. But yeah, I liked the Tsukiyomi fight. I felt like all of the mechanics were clear, well designed, and nicely spaced out from each other so that you can properly participate in them. And this fight is designed well to communicate what the story wants it to communicate as well. I felt like it was just a very solid trial all round. Maybe not the fanciest or most spectacular, because it's really about bringing a character story to an end rather than being a visual spectacle. But I felt like it was still a very solid fight. My
experience of it was a little marred by 2 idiots in our group who had not watched the video and were new to the fight, and were a healer and a DPS, and they were squawking about how unfair the fight was, and there was nowhere safe to stand because they didn't understand how the fans worked.
Video, watch it.
But the fans work exactly the same as Titan.
Yeah, they didn't get that part. So they were just a little special, and were squawking about it in chat the whole time. And it's a trial, so nobody wanted to kick them. But so we did wipe once, and had to do it again with the Echo. So experience was a little marred by those two very special individuals. But otherwise, I like the fight. And I think that's it for group content I've done. Real quick. Well, I guess I could wait till the end of Shadowbringers to really go into it. But so far, the story has been A Realm Reborn is A Realm Reborn. They're setting up for stuff and they're salvaging what's in 1.0. It's necessary but sluggy.
Mm-hmm.
Heavensward's a page turner, if nothing else. It's hard for me to judge the quality of it relative to everything else because of my schizo opinions on the story. Stormblood has this. It's a very segmented story, and some of those segments are really good, and some of those segments really aren't. Especially the front-loaded parts. And they just really drag. And I had to force myself to keep going with the main story parts up until basically the end of Mulgore. I didn't attach to the Mulgore story at all. I didn't attach to the intro to the Alamigo story. I felt something was off there in the way the story was being told. It didn't feel right.
I think that a lot of that is just there's a disconnect between the fact that the members of your little band of heroes they have a pre-existing connection to the area, whereas you as a player don't.
Yeah.
But that's lessened somewhat if you played through A Realm Reborn, because if you are playing actively during A Realm Reborn, what you bear witness to is the fact that the movement of Alamegan refugees through Thanalan is a critical driving factor to a lot of the little things that happen in side quests in that.
Yeah.
So if you've got that sort of pre-existing, oh well, I know who the people of Alamigo are. I've actually spent a bunch of time with them. I know what their plight is like, and that their things are really not good for them, and they would love to go home. Like that as somebody who played through A Realm Reborn, that was actually part of my experience. If you didn't do that, then it's just this place you have no reason to care about.
Yeah. And Japan land takes a while to set in. You have Yugiri and Gosetsu to anchor you there. But
well, Japanland in a JRPG is always banking on a certain crucial part of the player base's pre-existing connection to it.
Yeah. And I don't like or hate the Japanese aesthetic. I can take it or leave it. I'm very neutral towards it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of was whatever. And I didn't like the Mulgore tribe story.
Honestly, I think that whole section through Mulgore, through the Red Sea, it feels like a lot of it feels like busy work.
The Red Sea I liked. I thought the Red Sea was fine.
Yeah, Red Sea is mostly fine. But
I didn't understand the Mulgore part. Like I remember I lost a lot of momentum there simply due to the amount of traveling across the plane you've got to do.
Yes.
Yeah, the place is huge and it takes forever to get the move speed up there.
Yeah.
But I kind of still understand it, and I don't resent them for doing it, because it really does create the aesthetic of being a vast step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it was necessarily a good idea for them to do that or to let it have that sort of a deleterious impact on the pacing, but I do understand what they were trying to do by having that big, massive patch of Mulgore out in the middle of nowhere. I just don't understand why they felt the need to bolt that story in the way they did, because it's really poorly connected to everything else that's going on.
Yeah. It's just a way to attach more forces to the Japanland people.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there was probably some version of that was actually better integrated in the story, because you know how you use the thing that controls the flow of ether to trigger the construction of the wall to protect Doma much later in the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
That area where you can see that device is accessible right from the very start, which makes me think that there was a version of that zone where the greater tie of that region into the way the area, the sort of the natural forces of the area work as a whole, was originally something that played a bigger part, and it might have been involved in the story in an earlier version of the storytelling. Because there's a lot of stuff in that zone. Well, part of what makes that zone feel empty is not just that it's big or that you're ground pounding. It's that there's a lot of stuff in the zone that appears not to do anything.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that there was a version of the story earlier in development in which it did do things.
See giant field of Marlboros that glow in the dark.
Purples.
So you have that. It picks back up right near the climax of Japanland and starts to get interesting again. Hits a bit of a speed bump, I feel like, with the Alamigo dungeon and the climax with the menagerie. The story beats are there. They just didn't quite feel as hefty as they felt like they should have. But right when you get past that and into the post game, it picks right back up.
I think that that's enhanced by the fact that for you and for me when I originally played it, I had come back to the game for the launch of Stormblood after having been away for the latter part of Heavensward. And so for me and for you, the comparison between the way Heavensward's story and Dragonsong and that were brought to an end and the way the story of the main scenario of Stormblood was brought to a close were both quite close together and comparable, and they're not actually the same thing, because I feel like structurally and in terms of story impact, the close of the main scenario of Heavensward and the close of the main scenario of Stormblood are roughly even, but what you're remembering from Heavensward is not that. You're remembering the post-game and, the much more punchier story resolutions that you always get in the post-game. They're still fresh in your mind. And so when you come to the end of the main scenario of Stormblood, it's actually that weaker first ending that you always get in these expansions, not the actual ending.
Yeah. And right after that, it picks right back up in the post-game. And as silly as some of the mysteries are in the post-game of Stormblood, it gets back to being a page turner again.
Yeah, and I feel like in a lot of ways it's telling the same sort of cosmic story that World of Warcraft is trying to. It's just not doing it so completely incompetently. Like, World of Warcraft has been relentlessly teasing this army of light that are going to invade.
Yeah.
And that's the same sort of story beat that is being used in Final Fantasy, except it's being used in a competent way. So instead of looking like just another clownish carbon copy of the Iron Horde or whatever, it's actually like, well, this is light being a cosmic horror. This is what that looks like.
Yeah, they're doing foreshadowing for it that's actually proper with the post-game of Heavensward, where we have the entire Warriors of Darkness story that's setting up for, oh, this is what happens when light gets out of control.
Yeah, this is what it's supposed to look like. Like, World of Warcraft's development team constantly squawk on and on about how, oh no, we plan out our story for expansions in advance. Everything we're doing now is just cunningly setting up for stuff we do later. That's why every year we have to retcon half of our story.
Yes, that's what we call a lie.
Yeah. Whereas Final Fantasy has legitimately been setting this stuff up from the very beginning.
And they're still treating their agents of the light as individuals in Final Fantasy, rather than as a metaphysical race of good like the Naru were pitched as initially. And so they're treating more the they're treating more the element of light and how and they're playing off your associations with light, good, dark, bad, more than they're playing off the characters involved with those particular factions.
Well, I mean, that also that is a prejudice that is shared by the characters in the world of the source as well. It's not just a prejudice the players have, because what in the source, generally speaking, light is restoring order and the void center coming from the darkness to cause problems. That's the general experience. Though you see little hints of it here and there of the light gone wrong. Like you see a little bit of it in some of the dungeons where you are exploring civilizations that have been wiped out in previous calamities. Like you see what in retrospect is almost certainly a Sin Eater in one of the previous dungeons. Which one was it? Might be Wanderer's Palace or
I haven't
can't
done that
remember.
one.
Lost City of Amdapur. One of those. The from the sixth Umbral Calamity, and one of the monsters there pretty much looks like a Sin Eater. And
Yeah.
that's from A Realm Reborn. You can see sort of like, well, the previous calamities have left these things behind that look like creatures of light, but are absolutely not nice.
Yeah. So they're working that into Shadowbringers, and Shadowbringers, by contrast, as soon as you get out of Stormblood. Actually, I want to comment one more thing on Stormblood. The very ending, there's a big political scene, and normally these can be pretty dry, but they find a way to make it really engaging the whole time with this conference where you finally get face to face with the Garlean Emperor.
I think it probably a part of it that's effective is that they don't let the good guys stand on the moral high ground.
Yeah.
They are all clearly wound really tight because they're in a wartime situation, and they basically screw up the diplomatic side of things.
Yeah, it's only some last minute interjections of wait a minute, we need to chill our heads and try this again. That manages to salvage those talks into something that actually provides information. I mean, the war still happens, but obviously, but it's nice to see a political talk that actually seems realistic. Not realistic's the wrong word. That's actually really engaging. It's all pertinent information and character beats throughout that whole thing that really, really stick. And you have the mystery of the lead into Shadowbringers going along the whole time that's draining your available resources, we'll say, to avoid spoilers, very steadily, one headache at a time. So I like the way that Stormblood was executed building into Shadowbringers. And the Shadowbringer story so far has been engaging the whole way through. I can't wait to see what happens next every time a new part of the chapters are revealed. So that's about where I stand with the story so far. And I'm looking forward to going through Shadowbringers. And the way the story's playing out for this expansion, I'm not sure I'll be able to stop to deviate onto side stuff, because I just want to see what happens next.
You just got to compare that against basically every other MMO on the market, and like, there's nobody who just does this. Nobody does this anywhere near as well.
Yeah, and it's just a combination of having an actually competent writing staff and the ability to not have overhead interference meddling with that story you're writing. So yeah, that's all I got for my week. It's just a whole lot of Final Fantasy XIV.
All right. Yeah, there was one little thing that I didn't mention earlier, which I think Ari, you'll get a kick out of. So I was poking around Crunchyroll looking for something new to watch the other day, and something popped up in the recommendations that I just had to click on. Shadowverse.
Oh no.
Oh no, is
Why
right.
would you do that to yourself?
Because
It was
apparently
not
I like
necessary.
pain.
Everybody hates the anime.
It's
Oh.
awful. It's absolutely dreadful.
It's gotten even worse on the Shadowverse Reddit with the reveal of the new expansion set, because they're releasing 5 leaders this time instead of the usual 3, and 3 of them are from the anime, and everybody is ticked off.
Oh dear. So yeah, you've got, it's kind of the usual Yu-Gi-Oh style thing. Everyone's very into Shadowverse, and here's the protagonist with stupid hair who gets his phone out of a mysterious box in the garage because magic, I guess. But a lot of it seems to be everyone's playing Shadowverse and they're playing it super seriously, and then the protagonist turns up and says, Shadowverse is fun, and just wins.
The big issue people have with the Shadowverse story existing the way it does is Shadowverse has a perfectly serviceable story mode with a decent to good story, with Reveal being downright great.
Yeah.
In its storytelling already, and people wanted to see that animated.
Yeah.
They were attached to these characters in this setting, and they just didn't do it. They did this weird family-friendly spinoff. Yeah, we got this weird family-friendly spinoff thing that nobody wanted. Everybody wanted to see our 8 heroes go on their planeswalking journey across the realms, and everybody was especially hyped when it was first announced, but not revealed what it was yet, because it happened right when Reveal came out, which everybody loves.
Oof.
And when it was announced that it was going to be something different, if you go list by top-rated posts on the Reddit of all time, it won't take much scrolling to find some outrage posts.
I see. So yeah, it's bad even by the standards of card game anime. Especially considering he seems to think that every problem can be solved with Ignis Dragon.
Yeah, he's
Every
becoming a
single
card in the
It
main
sounds
game now.
like you're describing Yu-Gi-Oh, basically.
It's not far wrong. Like, cheating is perfectly allowed as long as you blame the heart of the cards.
Yeah,
That's how
they're
Yu-Gi-Oh
making
works.
anime. They're taking anime exclusive cards now and making them in the proper game, and nobody likes it.
Yeah.
They're coming in the next expansion, and nobody gives a flying crap about the anime. They just want to see what's going to happen after Velsar and go back to Reveal, which is the next beat in the story. And the fact that they're derping around with this instead of putting more Reveal story out is really ticking people off.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a terrible mistake. I should have actually been paying attention to what I was supposed to be doing. So now I'm in a pressurized cabin and at risk of being pulled through a 2-inch hole.
Oh dear.
So,
It'll be fine.
if I just grab my welder and just go, where's a nice piece of hole? And drill a hole.
We need to get onto the email, though, because we've been going for 2 hours on weeks.
He has.
So, I posted it in the
It's only
show
a
host
quick
board.
one.
So, who wants to get it?
I've got it up if you really want it. It's only a short
You
one.
can go for it.
It comes from our good buddy Certus, and he says, "Dear No Excuses." So, Doom Thick Orc Waifu Edition Episode 2 released. Eden Bloodright continues where the previous game finished. This time, the maps are even bigger, less linear, there are more secrets to find, and boy is it long. You have all kinds of levels, cities, villages, forts, lava and ice places, factories, ship-to-ship combat on a lake of fire, and I'm nowhere near finished. Also, Ashes 2063 is coming soon. The best Mad Max game on PC. It is a Doom mod because everything Western worth playing is, unless you really like the strong independent woman's Hampshire woman. Good grief. What even is that? And that's from
Strong independent side shave woman.
There you go.
They always do have the same haircut.
They always have the same haircut.
It's like women in Western media now are not allowed to have long hair on the sides of their head.
Yeah. I did play one game actually as well.
Ugly haircut.
Yeah.
It is.
I've played the first little bit of another game, which I'll probably talk about next week, but it's like it's right at the start of the game, you meet 3, competent women. And it's like, okay, which one of you is gay? And at that point, one of them may as well have just raised their hand. She raises her hand about 5 minutes later. But still, it's just like, it's cliche at this point. Stop it. Also, calling your game Ashes. Bad idea around Australians, because now we're just thinking, explosion-based cricket.
What?
Yeah.
The Ashes as a cricket trophy. They burned a cricket stump or something, didn't they?
They did, and they just stuck it in the trophy, so it became the Ashes. Cricket it's worse than baseball.
Oh, I know what cricket is.
Yeah.
But,
those who've never played it, it's boring and it's worse than baseball. Baseball is boring as it is. I have no idea what I'm doing now. I've done horrible things and I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah.
I know. Well, that's a lie. I don't know the specifics of cricket, but I get the feeling I don't need to because I always just thought it was British baseball.
Close enough.
I posted the Ashes in the show chat.
Yeah.
It's literally an urn full of ashes.
It is literally that.
I see.
And Australia and England argue about it every year. Well, I'd say argue about it. England invented the sport, but they're crap at it.
Yeah, it was something about it was supposed to symbolise the death of English cricket or something.
Something like that.
I remember exactly. I
Because-
think it was the first time Australia crushed the English in England at cricket or something like
The
that.
first of many. You've
And
got
so
there's-
it's the sort of sporting rivalry that's actually kind of cool. Like the scenario is like the English always win at cricket because it's their game, right? And the Australians go over there and they beat the English for the first time ever in like the 19th century or something, and they burn the cricket stump and put it in the cup and they take it home, and so they start this hundreds of years war over who can bring the ashes back to their country.
Yeah. But now, as it is, you've got 3 big players in the international cricket scene. You've got Australia, India, and Pakistan. And all
you
3
guys-
sneer at England.
Well, you guys won't be in it much longer the way your country's going because you won't be allowed to leave the country.
Yeah, I used to, but before I had podcasts to listen to because I managed to get the Bluetooth in my car to work, I used to just listen to the radio. And the show that was on as I was driving home was always the sports one, the sports commentary. Not live sports commentary, but a guy was basically talking about the state of various sports at the moment worldwide. And it was actually really bizarre. Like, I don't remember any of the fine grained detail, but it was actually really bizarre how worldwide lockdown patterns had completely distorted the state of play in sports.
Yeah.
Because nobody was practicing, nobody was willing to go to certain countries that had certain lockdown policies, and everybody was basically getting fat and lazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The entire face of sports had been distorted based on the countries which had the harsher lockdown policies had fatter and lazier athletes now, and so their country's previous performance suddenly no longer mattered because their athletes weren't allowed to practice.
There's should
In
be
other
some sort
countries
of
with
joke
lighter
here
requests.
about esports. Joke's on you. We don't leave the house anyway.
So if everybody had come to their senses and ended this delusional war against the common cold, it would have been actually a really interesting sporting situations because it would have hit the reset button on a lot of teams that would have had to rebuild their ability from scratch because they spent so much time on their backside.
Mm-hmm.
But
Good times.
it didn't happen. Everybody's still locked up in their houses.
There is one other thing, actually, I am really amazed about. You actually listen to a show on the radio. Every time I turn the radio on, it's like half an hour of ads.
I don't turn the radio on ever anymore because it's literally just wall-to-wall COVID propaganda now. It's like, get the vaccine. Every 5 minutes, they'll be talking about how you need to get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine. They don't seem to realise that when you constantly browbeat somebody to do something like that, it makes them less and less willing to cooperate.
It really does.
Yeah. Even if that stupid thing was the most magical cure of all time, at this point, it's a point of pride.
Pride is probably not a word for it, but stubbornness certainly is.
Well, we have a proud tradition of stubbornness. Thank you very much.
Okay, there you go.
So yeah. Thank you for the email, Sarathus.
Thank you.
We
One of these
We
days I
got,
will check out some of these Doom mods, but I do have.
you have to.
I actually have
There is
Doom on
no-
my Steam list now. I got that far.
There are so many of them that you are bound to find one that's totally up your alley.
Yeah, like that random generated scenario one I did try. I forget what it was called. But that was a load of fun, even if I was awful at it, and yeah, it was very punishing as well.
Honestly, that's my usual experience with these, is that I have fun with them, but I'm so bad at them that I can't make much progress. Like, I thought that the Toho one was actually really cool. I had a good time with it, but I just kept dying on the first boss.
Doom with waifus.
Which is basically, that describes every Toho game, is that I have great fun with it, but I keep dying on the first boss.
Yeah, that sounds like
I
Toho.
I can't do shmups. Like, I like them, but I can't do them at all.
Require an astronomical amount of brain power.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to have a certain type of almost superhuman attention in order to,
Right.
to simultaneously see everything and to see it several seconds at least into the future. And
You
it
need-
doesn't help that Western shmups were so much easier than Eastern ones when I was growing up. That
Right.
like I don't know if you ever played Raptor or Overkill, any of those,
I remember Raptor.
but they are vastly easier than their Japanese cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 3 news articles with meat to them, and some meat to them, and a newslet. So
Yeah.
we should probably jump into these since we're running late already.
All right, take a pick.
Alrighty.
All right, so I'll do the one I posted first.
All
So last week, we're bringing politics in, Fern. Tripwire CEO, on his own, I'm pretty sure, not as a spokesman for the company, came out in favor of Texas's new abortion law. A bunch of people ran out and bought Killing Floor because of this. And then he got sacked 3 days later.
Well, did he get sacked or did he quote voluntarily unquote step down?
He quote voluntarily unquote step down. And while we can tell you this, you all know what that means.
Yeah, he was forced to by internal pressure.
Yeah.
But there is an argument. There is an argument I've seen people making, and I think that they're making it sincerely, that he is not necessarily taking the responsible approach when he knows that. I'm not saying this is a fair argument, but he knows that there is going to be backlash against his business and his employees for opinions that they don't share. Like, they don't necessarily think that they need to either come out with their opinions or hold the same opinions as him, but they will be treated as though they do, and he knows that because people are irrational and they behave in that way. And so he should have been more circumspect about what he said publicly because of what it would do to his employees. That's the argument that I've seen. And I think there is a small amount of merit to it. Like, I think that it's legitimate that he has to be aware, given the current psychopathic state of the public discourse, that anything that he says can be used against people who didn't say it.
Yeah. It is a true statement that people irrationally attach his words to other people. But
I'm not saying that that's his fault.
Yeah.
But it is certainly a reality of this new and hideous world that we're in, that it may simply just need to become a consideration for people.
Yeah.
I would be happy if the entire pro-choice viewpoint was wiped off the face of the earth, never to smear the human race again. However, that is not going to happen.
You mean the murdering point of view?
Yeah.
Because
that argument, there are no coherent arguments in favor of it that are not absolutely psychopathic. So, like, the world would not suffer from the departure of that point of view. However, because it is a point of view that is grounded 100% in cowardice and selfishness, those two things are so deeply intrinsic to the human condition that they're never going away.
Yeah.
So that's why there is this hanging question of, well, what level of circumspection should be necessary given the way people behave these days in this absolutely lunatic manner, where they are willing to seriously harm unrelated people's livelihoods simply because they disagree with the opinions of the person they happen to work for. I mean, there's nothing in their contract saying that they should agree with their boss or that they should be responsible for their boss's opinions or anything like that. But that is the world we live in now.
Yeah. And it's one of those questions with what should be right and what actually is reflective of the real world. Like, he should be able to say whatever he wants and people not tied to people, but we don't live in that world.
Yeah, I mean, it's to a certain extent, it is, just an acceptable reality of real life that you are going to have to take responsibility for the things that you say, and even if people behave in an unreasonable way because of it, then that's on them. But it's a real serious distortion of the public discourse that people who don't say it are then held responsible for the things they didn't say, but somebody that they are tangentially connected to said.
Yeah. This is a cultural consciousness thing with people being tied to the people around them and the people that are supposed to, I guess,
Well,
be the boss of them.
it's guilt by association. Ultimately,
Yeah.
it's just guilt by association. These people are being held responsible for, like, I'm sure, I am absolutely sure that the guy in charge of Tripwire, when he said those things, he was absolutely 110% behind what he said and willing to take responsibility for all the consequences himself. I bet he was. But he didn't ask his employees if they were.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the way things currently are, they will be treated as if they were.
Yeah. We live in a culture that is not just able to fall into guilt by association traps, but actively encourages it. If you are a specific race, you are an oppressor after all.
Well, I mean, this is the way that that the left end of the political aisle has always operated 100% on pigeonholing people into various classes and groups. That's just the way they operate as collectives, not as individuals. There is no individualism allowed. You must act in accordance with a particular set of precepts that are contingent on your status in society and the conditions of your birth.
You are your labels that you were born with and nothing else. So yeah, sad that it happened in general, the way he had to go out. And I really don't know. You have to go through a whole cultural reconditioning phase to be able to say stuff like this these days. We've got to be able to, I mean, I don't know. I mean, given the subject matter, though, the fact that he came out against, murder, his employees should just have to suck it up.
In a world not gone mad, there would be no controversy about what he said to begin with. But we don't live in a world not gone mad. So
we have an entire half of the political spectrum that wants to murder babies and puppies. So
I don't really understand how it came to be that baby murder was like the controversial thing. Like, is baby murder bad type of thing?
Yep.
But that is the world we live in, and unfortunately, until it is consumed in fire, that will continue to be the way of things.
So how you doing, Fern?
Yeah.
He's trying to keep his mind as blank as possible.
Yeah, I'm just thinking la 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 la, not listening.
So yeah.
What are we doing?
Moving on to the next topic so you can pull your fingers out of your ears.
Okay.
So
we need to talk about some video games then.
So, KOTOR's getting a reboot.
Oh, boy.
The question is, will it be recognizable by the time it does?
The answer at this point is no.
Yeah.
They got one of the writers from, of all places, the Mary Sue, working on it.
Yeah.
Well, like we were talking about incestuous industries before.
Oh boy, yes. So if you want a hack game, well, not even a games journalist, just a hack journalist.
Just a millennial flunky.
The thing is that everyone who is a hack journalist thought of themselves as a up-and-coming writer once upon a time.
Yeah.
That's how you end up being a hack journalist, is if you thought that you were going to be big for your writing skills.
Yeah.
The thing is that a lot of people don't seem to understand that almost nobody can make it as a writer. Almost nobody. Like, within statistical... It's like you are roughly as likely to become a movie star. Within statistical bounds, it is impossible to become a successful writer.
Both
the people that do it are pretty much almost flukes.
Both Butcher and Korea have gone out of their way to explain this to people in multiple interviews each. That it just, you have to get lucky, and you have to be astronomically lucky. Like,
or
Butcher's
have the right politics. That's also an option nowadays.
Yeah, Butcher's Twitter handle is Longshot Author. Like,
yeah, it is.
Like, both him and Korea have given extensive talks about how you just don't go into life expecting to be a writer, If you like writing and it just kind of happens, great. But that is not your career choice.
No, it's a thing you do on the side until you get lucky, or if you get lucky.
Yeah, I think Korea was an accountant before he became an author.
Yeah, I think he actually based Owen Pitt kind of on himself a little bit.
Yeah, well, he based his career. Yeah, his careers and interests were based on what he knew best, according to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, Butcher, I think, got in a lucky break early on.
Yeah, he pitched Dresden Files early to a bunch of publishers right out of college.
Yeah.
So he lucked out, and he knows he lucked out. He's expounded on how he just happened to meet the right people at the right time.
He seems to get around by making successful book series out of really stupid bets now.
Well, he's made it now. He's got a name.
Yeah.
People will buy his stuff. Like, I bought the Codex Alera, even though it's the Roman Legion with Pokemon.
And the Zerg.
Yeah.
The literal Zerg.
Snake and New Boots' his best character.
Yeah, Snake and New Boots is definitely... Snake and New Boots. Blech. The cow thing.
Oh, speaking of, I did, during my roulettes this week, I listened to the new Monster Hunter International book.
Oh yeah, that's out, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll save my my oratory on it for next week or something.
Yeah,
or the week after.
I think I got to wait for my next Audible credit before I can grab it.
But yeah, it's a thing that exists.
Oratory is a place that you speak, and oration is a speech.
There you go.
There you go.
So I can't English good ever. So we'll
Either
take a word that's in the ball. I'll take a word that's in
no
the ballpark.
No one outside the church uses the term oratory anymore.
No.
So yeah. Where were we? Oh, right, the Mary Sue. So Star Wars is now in the hands of people that have actively expressed their disdain for the people that play video games.
And the franchise that they're actually actively employed in.
Yeah. This is going to be something that I will have to check back on after it's released to see just how bad it goes. Because I get the feeling this is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah, I would love to see KOTOR be released as is with a fresh coat of paint. That's all it needs. Game is pretty much perfect otherwise.
I don't know. Like, it always sounds good to have a fresh coat of paint, but sometimes I wonder if there are certain games that their rough edges would just become more apparent. And
that's definitely true.
To completely graphically rebuild the entire thing, and even then, like, those dated game mechanics, they sort of feel like they fit with the aesthetic, more primitive aesthetic. Because remember, it's like D&D 3.0 remix or something.
Yeah, it was used to make Neverwinter Nights 2. That engine.
And KOTOR itself is it is a product of its time in a video game form. Like, this is the definition of a Western RPG from around that time. Even its storytelling, the kind of twists and turns that you see in the KOTOR story nowadays are overused and don't pack anywhere near as much of a punch. The gameplay mechanics, while old and clunky by today's standards when you go back to it, there's still a time capsule of when that type of thing happened. You can't really get it anywhere else aside from going back to those old games. But if you strip that out and you streamline KOTOR's storytelling, but keep the same general story, you give it a new coat of paint, and you strip all the mechanics down to something more modern and manageable, you just have a fairly generic Star Wars story.
Yeah. Admittedly, it is also the one bit of extended universe lore that Disney did not retcon.
Yeah, so I don't really want a remake of KOTOR because it's such a capsule for its time. A whole lot of my memories of KOTOR are tied up in it being the game from that period in video games.
Also, I don't think that the fact that it looks ugly would actually affect my decision whether or not to go back and play it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm perfectly happy with KOTOR as it is. If I want to play KOTOR again, I will go back and play KOTOR again. And if they release it with a new coat of paint, it does not actually make me more likely to go back to play it again, I don't think.
Yeah.
I'm not playing it because of the graphics.
Admittedly,
I'm playing it because I enjoy that journey.
Yeah, admittedly, if I wanted to play KOTOR with a fresh coat of paint, I could probably find a mod to do that.
Maybe. I
Oh,
mean, it's been around a long time. There's a lot of community work has been done on it over the years.
Especially KOTOR 2.
Yeah.
The community
goodness knows
finished the game.
You could
Well, like,
probably find it completely built within another game engine, which has a powerful enough modding system.
Almost certainly.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody had done it.
You could probably
But-
get KOTOR in Skyrim or something.
Just for the memes at this point.
Yeah, it's a product I legitimately don't think I want or wanted to exist. Because KOTOR is nice as a memory and something to occasionally poke at again or go back to when you have a hankering for when you were a teenager or something.
Yeah.
I feel like there's almost more to lose than there is to gain by having KOTOR done again.
Yeah, it's not
Like,
something.
and I think it sort of behooves us to be protective of these old things, lest they be exhumed and violated. See Star Wars, see The Matrix.
Oh, yeah. I deliberately avoided watching the Matrix trailer, and I am so very, very glad I did.
I'm the sort of person who just can't stop themselves from picking at scabs until they bleed.
You'll
Like-
learn one day, maybe.
And I really regret beholding that trailer because it's deeply, deeply awful.
Yeah. But the Matrix has had one good movie. Just one.
There is only one Matrix movie. What are
There
you
is
talking
only one
about?
Matrix movie.
But this movie, it looks exactly like Star Wars in that they're just recycling everything before and constantly going wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Remember this? Remember this? Remember this? The white rabbit, the white rabbit, the red pill, the blue pill. You remember this? And
That
it
was
just
fun.
does this. The entire trailer is just remember this, remember this, remember this.
Oh.
There's
My-
not a shred of originality to be found.
At least the
My-
Last
my-
Jedi had... what was the Last Jedi? Force Unleashed. Whichever one. The first of the sequel trilogy. Had a couple of moments of that, and then that was it. And, right until they
Well,
ruined everything.
The whole movie was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It retold the story of A New Hope.
Except that it was hollow of any kind of heroism or meaning.
Oh, yeah, the whole
Yeah.
thing was emotionally dead, but, yeah.
Like, almost beat for beat, it tries to retell A New Hope, but badly.
It did do that badly.
The thing that you've got to keep in mind, though, with the Matrix one is that the director, freshly dubbed Lana Wachowski, has tried to retcon, saying that it was this way all the time, that the entirety of the Matrix movie was supposed to be an allegory for transgenderism.
What? No.
Yeah, it's
Well, she, I can't remember this. It's a he, right? I don't know. The director is using it as using the authority of being the director to declare that it was always so. That it was always so.
yeah.
This
No.
was
Like,
always the point.
a director lying to your face with a retcon that just blatantly isn't true.
Yeah.
So you can guarantee, as this director has become an increasingly hysterical activist over the course of time, that it's going to be unbelievably browbeating when
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes to this new one.
I'll
There's
tell you my
no such
theory on
thing
it.
as subtlety in this sort of dictionary.
My theory for this whole movie is that this is all a glowy op to redefine the word red pill.
Oh no, they've said that. They're already the columns have gone out to the various talking heads saying that the purpose of this movie is to reclaim the Matrix from the alt-right.
It was never a part of the alt-right in the first. There is no such thing as the alt-right.
Those columns have already been written. I've seen them.
Yeah, I haven't been digging that deep into it. In fact, I haven't been digging that deep I haven't been digging at all into it. It's just a thing that's kind of happening in the background for me.
For the sake of sanity, don't.
Yeah, if you there is nothing to be gained by digging into it other than despair that another piece of your childhood is being trampled.
Yeah, Lee, I remember I went to Six Flags as I was like 11-ish, I guess, and they had the Matrix as a promotion, and all the cups at Six Flags had Matrix stuff on them.
The thing is, they don't really seem to understand that none of that crap is cool anymore. Like, so much of what made the Matrix a phenomenon was the sort of resonant theme that, oh, well, the reality you know is just a story, just a narrative being spun by somebody with more power than you, that resonates with people. Resonated with people back then. It would probably resonate even more now if they told it the way it was told back then. But what gave it the impact, rather than just the resonance, was the aesthetics. But the
Yeah.
thing is that those aesthetics have now been reheated so many times with so many other people, like
Mhm.
you were talking about the twists and turns in KOTOR. Those things have been redone so many times that they just don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that whole sort of aesthetic of, you know, dark dress, dark glasses, juxtaposed with the sort of like Baroque interiors and that sort of thing. All of that stuff, that aesthetic stuff, is now old hat. It's not cool anymore. It doesn't have impact anymore at all.
Yeah.
The closest thing to a moral message that can easily be ascribed from the Matrix just isn't true anymore by this author's point of view on the world, where choosing the difficult reality over the nice, comfy fantasy life is just something they don't believe in.
Well, yeah,
By their choices.
the essence of progressivism is postmodernism. The idea that a story is as good as the truth if you believe in it. That's the core of what they believe. The core of what they believe is the blue pill.
Yeah,
So
so-
that's how they operate. So, when you try and wokeify something, not only is it going to be old hat, but it will be playing against type. It will be a outright denial of what the eyes see, because what people will see is this is being presented to us as the Matrix that we remember, but they are telling us things that run exactly counter to the Matrix that we remember. So the whole thing is going to feel like a deception.
yeah, it's going to feel like an indictment of the original Matrix's message it was trying to get across.
Presumably, they're hoping that they will be able to sell this enough to stupid Zoomers that it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's I don't. Oh, it looks bad.
Yeah, it looks
So, yeah.
dreadful from the reception
And-
I've seen.
But the thing is that the reason why I mention this is that I feel similarly about the KOTOR thing.
Yeah.
That's why I just don't want to see it happen. Let the things in the past that I remember as great remain in the past where they will stay great, rather than bringing them into the present and pissing all over them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
not
bajillion
looking
dollar
good.
industry, though. I mean, it's what been keeping Netflix alive for the last couple of years. Ugh.
So, yeah, KOTOR's getting a remake. We'll keep an eye on how bad this goes, but we won't really have much more to report on it till it releases, and I guarantee we'll have a news topic about it because it's probably going to be just that bad.
Well, there are aspects of it that I'm interested in. Like, I'm sort of curious as to, for instance, what rights will Disney have to influence this? Like, there are sort of interesting legal and procedural questions about how this thing could get made.
Yeah, the mouse is involved now. That changes things.
Let's see. Popular of all time.
Stuff
Yeah,
to think
here we
about.
are. So, 10 seconds on Nexus mods. I have found 3 mods that I could install and achieve a much more favourable result. And they're all just visual overhauls, and there's one quality of life.
The thing that you can say that unites those things that are, though, as opposed to this new thing, those things were made for love of the original.
Yes.
The new one is going to be made for love of money.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Dear.
Actually, there's a person here who's done a complete retexture of every character, and they look really, really good.
That's what happens when something is done for love rather than for money.
Where's his HK one? That's a character I'm expecting to be completely gutted. It's poor old HK.
No, it probably won't even appear.
HK was one of the best bits of that game.
Well, they'll turn him into something else.
A toaster.
He'll be an Aesop on what it's like to be agender,
No.
because he's a robot, so he doesn't have a
Statement.
gender. So the entire thing will be about how he's genderless.
Statement: this droid is gender fluid.
You can imagine it, can't you, Fern? You can imagine it.
I can, and I hate it.
Therefore, designations for this unit's gender are inaccurate.
He's
Meatbag.
going to have his own set of robot pronouns.
Whereas, classic HK would just start shooting.
My pronouns are mer and der.
Yeah, there you go. So, right,
The
can we move on?
It unsettles you because it feels so real.
It feels so very, very likely, and I hate everything about it.
So yeah, we'll jump on that as more news comes out. Next, we have one more big topic to go on, and this one's a little more technical than the other ones, than the ones we've been talking about. Want to jump into that one?
Go for it.
We have a ruling in the Epic versus Apple lawsuit that's been ongoing. How long has this thing been going on? Like a year? Ish?
I don't know.
I think it's about a year-ish. All the articles just say last year's, so I think it's been a full year, or close to it. But yeah, I haven't actually read through the article I linked in the chat. I watched the Nicky Rackets breakdown of it. And it's an interesting ruling, but not one I'm really so certain on the long-term consequences of. So the basic ruling is that, for those that don't remember, well, I guess we can go over what the lawsuit was. Fortnite went and sued Apple for monopolistic practices because they had set up an alternate way to pay for their cosmetics in Fortnite through a sideloaded app that did not give Apple their App Store cut of 30% or something. And Apple didn't like this, so Apple booted Fortnite off of the App Store, and they cited Epic as being in breach of contract. Well, Epic decided to sue Apple for monopolistic practices and being anti-competitive. This has been weaseling its way through the court system with all kinds of tomfoolery going on, up to and including petitioning unrelated parties like Steam for their sales data, and has finally got to a point where we have some kind of ruling from a judge. So the current ruling as stands is, number one, he ruled that Epic was in breach of contract as it was written at the time, and they legally have to pay all the money in that time that Apple would have gotten from sales that they made through the sideloaded app to Apple. This was, from what I understand, agreed upon by the parties before the judge made his ruling, if the judge did not find Apple a monopoly, which he did not. Apple was not a monopoly. So, Apple didn't get off scot-free yet, but it's hard to tell with the California legal system how sticky this ruling's going to be and what it's going to do, because California courts are weird. Number one, their rulings don't stick very hard because it's often up to a judge in California, and judges can just disregard precedent in California. They're not supposed to, but they can. And even though this judge has set the precedent of his current ruling, other judges may not. And what he said was Apple was in violation by having anti-competitive practices with the way they handle their 30% cut and not allowing other apps to have some kind of way to circumvent Apple's cut inside their app. So this is tricky to enforce and trickier to follow up with, because Apple now is in a wonky legal position where it can be found guilty of anti-competitive practices with cited precedent from any company that decides they just want to include a sideloaded thing now. And it, in theory, would be somebody like the Clash of Clans people could put their microtransactions in a sideloaded app, charge you a little less money, and take more of the cut. And Apple just wouldn't get anything from that purchase. And if Apple kicked them off the store for it, they could take them to court and cite them for anti-competitive practices, and the judge would agree with immediately if precedent actually mattered in California. The problem is, Apple actually is a functional monopoly, and the California court system makes this ruling hard to stick, because the next judge can just disregard precedent. So Apple can just boot the app off the market, and who else are they going to go to get money from? Because if they can put their app on the Play Store, but the majority of their players come from the Apple App Store more than likely. At least in the US. So that's where the ruling stands right now. Y'all got anything on this? I'm kind of...
No, I'm not too brushed up on the whole legal side of things anymore.
No, I don't. I haven't been following this because I feel like it's a scenario where there are no good guys, so I don't really care.
Yeah, it's hard to root for either side, honestly.
Yeah, it's...
They're both scumbags.
It's a ruling neither party was happy with, which seems like a win in my book, even though it doesn't actually help the customer at all.
Yeah, what's the saying? That's the sign of a good compromise.
Yeah. So I'm happy to see them both lose, but I am afraid this lawsuit has burned the bad will Apple has generated over the years, at least in the legal system.
Maybe.
Because I just don't. Because we need to bop them for monopolistic practices. They will make things very difficult, or it's a very difficult market right now. If you have a mobile app, you have to go through the App Store or the Google Play Store. And those are your only choices.
Mm-hmm.
And they both effectively operate as independent entities that do not fight with each other.
Yeah.
So there is no competition as far as that goes.
Yeah, your only other option is to, launch the APK separately and, hope your customers know what they're doing on that front.
Yeah, but that requires more knowledge than average Joe with a smartphone. Like, I have to use an iPhone because my main company I represent with my business has their app to manage their pumps only on iPhone.
Ugh.
So, yeah.
I know that Android is property of the Google overlords, but at least it's a bit more user-friendly.
They're all part of the same Silicon Valley pseudo-monopoly.
Yeah, the uncanny valley.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting that it happened, because we were talking about it a little bit, and I just wanted to bring the ruling to people's ears since we were talking about it before.
Yep. Alright, so that's that. I think that's about it. Like, Sony had an event. They had their big presser this week, but...
Didn't care.
We
got God of Boy again.
Okay.
It's got Thor in
what
it.
else do they have, really? Sony just, they don't have anything to offer. They had a chance to really get a leg up on Microsoft in a big way if they could do their thing. Because, I mean, the way it works is that if what you're interested in is getting more games per dollar, then you go with Microsoft. And if what you're interested in is big blockbuster titles with really high degree of polish and visual flair, then you go with Sony.
Mm-hmm.
But Microsoft doesn't have any system sellers.
Nope.
So this is the best chance that that Sony has to get one up on them, and they seem to just more or less have blown it.
Yeah, like Microsoft has shot themselves in the foot with basically Halo. Halo has always been their console seller.
But their new Halo's free to play, ain't it?
Maybe. It looks like poopy, either way.
Well, their new Halo doesn't exist as the more operative thing.
Also that.
Yeah. They were going to try and kick this thing out a year ago when it wasn't even close to done.
Yeah, and you also had the Master Chief Collection, which was Halo games that people have already played.
And at launch was the most broken Halo game series of all time.
Yes. So, yeah, the floor was open for Sony.
But they just haven't delivered anything that is really... doesn't stink of modern AAA.
Yeah, modern AAA has a definite reek about it lately.
It's
It's
just-
all marketing and no substance.
yeah. I'm sorry. I don't care about strong, independent women with no hair or colored hair
It's cliche.
anymore.
Side shave.
It's yeah, side shave. It's just I don't care about God of Boy. I don't care about Uncharted.
Yeah, they're doing an Uncharted Collector's Edition, or collection, rather. It's all 4 games.
I heard there was a bit of scandal over the way that they were doing their their new Horizon like upgrade, or
Yeah, they
was
had
it an upgrade or something?
They're not giving you a free PS. Yeah, they're not giving you a free PS5 upgrade.
Yeah.
That seems like a good way to make a lot of enemies for no reason.
It's been something they've been doing since the PS5's launch. Is a game will launch when you buy a game on the PS5, you also get the PS4, and vice versa.
No, they aren't doing that for starters.
Okay.
The way I understand it is the difference with this one. The reason why it's so scandalous is that there is no upgrade.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to buy outright a version for one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody can get their hands on a PS5 right now.
Yeah.
So if they want to play it at all, they have to buy the PS4 one and then pay more to buy the PS5 one later if they want to buy it on the PS5.
You should buy it on a PS4 and not waste your money on a PS5.
How long have these next gen consoles been out? A year and some change, and still nobody has one.
Probably getting closer to 2 years right now, I think of it.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, they've sold a lot of them, but I'm not sure where they're selling them to.
Yeah,
yeah.
they're not making it into circulation, that's for sure.
I know I don't have the same social circle I used to, but I don't know anybody that has one.
I know one person who bought one, and he was on a waiting list for 6 months.
I don't know anybody who's got one. I've never even seen one in the flesh before.
I had to ask the obvious question of why. He didn't have a really good answer. Didn't have much of an answer at all, actually.
The hype, man, the hype.
I mean, Demon's Souls.
Hype.
Demons.
I guess
is,
if you really want to play the Demon's Souls remake, I mean, it looks good. It's just not a system mover.
wasn't there a PS4 version of that as well?
Nope.
Oh, there you go then. So
It's
they have
the
one game.
big exclusive they have.
Yeah, it was intended to be a system seller.
It didn't. Well, you got to have systems to sell.
There's that, and there's also the fact that Demon's Souls remake is all good, but it's a remake of a game I played before.
Yes. All right. I'm just have a quick flick through. Let me see if there was anything at all from Sony, but I don't think there was. Let's see.
Even if they did have something that's announced, it comes down to I still go back to the same line I have with all these pressers. I don't trust these people.
Yeah.
Like you can come out with something blockbuster, but I just don't care about your marketing or your hype train anymore.
Yeah.
Because you've lied to me so many times.
You put more money into the marketing than you do into the actual development of the game. That is where your fault is.
I have been Molyneuxed to death for too many years in a row.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. No, I'm not seeing anything at all. Everything that's interesting isn't PS5. Or isn't PlayStation. Like, you got MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. Mech 5 is a fantastic game. But it's also been out on PC for like 2 years. 3 years.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't see a reason to move into this generation at all.
Well, yeah.
This new generation of consoles at all. Like, if I want to play the stuff on the Microsoft platform, can't I just use their Game Pass and
Yes.
then play it on PC?
Yes, you can.
And Sony is like, there's not even any reason to consider Sony because you can't participate in that anyway because they don't exist.
They've got no exclusives anyway, so...
So yeah, there's no reason to be involved in a new console generation at all.
No.
They've totally screwed the pooch.
Like, Sony's screwed it because they're just incompetent. Microsoft, I wouldn't say they've screwed it because they're kind of pushing everyone to be on PC anyway. That's their end goal.
Yeah, they want their box to be the normie box
Yeah.
at this point.
Which they've achieved this generation.
They're going to get there by accident because I don't think they had a very good pitch to sell the dumb thing, but you just can't get a PS5. So if people want a modern console box to put in their living room, the Xbox is the only thing you can buy. And even then, they still have supply problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, so yeah, at the moment, you only really need 2 gaming systems. The PC and your Switch. And you don't necessarily need the Switch.
Yeah, like everything of interest is on PC. Like Tales of Arise just came out, and while I'll probably get it on PS4, I could just get it on PC too.
Yeah, you could.
I've seen some chatter going about that the new Tales game has some pretty demonic DLC. Approaches.
Yeah,
I don't know much about it.
I've heard Dragon Age style. Every time you go back to camp, please buy the DLC level stuff.
Enchantment.
I love that little kid. He was so cool. However, he did have a creaky person in the bushes right behind him trying to peddle off overpriced DLC. Remember those days and how that actually seems very tame now? Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, back when Dragon Age came out, we thought it was scummy having the NPC hiding in the bushes selling the DLC.
Or the giant rock monster.
Yeah, you'd knock on Shale. Shale was awesome. And her dislike of pigeons. But yeah. Yeah, you had to pre-order the game or be an early adopter to get her for free, otherwise it was cough up.
Yeah.
But she was also one of the best companions you got, because of course she was. Alright.
So yeah.
With that,
I think
that's it.
Yep, I think we got everything this week. All right. Closing comments go.
Does somebody have some spare time? I will take somebody's spare time if they've got some.
So can I please borrow a cup of time?
Yes, please. 1 cup of time.
You might be looking for time. You'll be looking for anywhere to stay pretty soon after you flee your country on a dinghy.
I'm not worried about it.
Actually,
I think that inland Australia is a sufficiently different country from coastal Australia.
Oh, it is.
It probably won't be touched for a long time.
Yeah, there is there's a physical barrier too. It's called the Great Dividing Range. But on the other side of that, it's a completely different landscape, a completely different country.
Yeah, I'm just, me and Vol have improved the plan to something more realistic to bust you out of jail.
No, I'm fine.
It's still...
I don't think your rubber dinghy with a mortar is going to work in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here. I'm behind a wall made of snakes and spiders. It's fine.
I mean, we're going to have to start taking the plan seriously the way your country's going.
Realistically, the issues in Australia are confined largely to Victoria and New South Wales. And nobody anywhere else in Australia likes anyone in Victoria or New South Wales. So.
We really don't.
See.
Like, we get a lot of tourists up here from Victoria, and without exception, they're all really rude and can't drive.
I open TD every day and I see new news about Australia. I'm like, man, I gotta check on Fern.
Most of it's pretty overblown. Like, out here, we just don't give a care.
The worst driving I have ever seen on the road in my life has been in Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, that makes sense. You should give those people a caravan and set them loose. Our poor fuel bowsers out here are just beat to hell because these people keep running them over with caravans. Ugh.
Alrighty, folks. I think we're done. We'll see you next week. Well, me and Fern will anyway.
Yes.
Vol may or may not be here. If he is, we'll try to cobble together a show if he's got internet that's working.
We'll figure something out.
If not, me and Fern will wing it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We'll do a filler show if nothing else. So we'll see you next week. Sayonara. Bye-bye.